Russia preparing for a spring offensive in Ukraine, the world may have to wait for negotiations to occur.
The Ukrainians know that this is going to come once the winter is over. And what we have to do is really to supply them with the maximum amount of support we can give to them. If at a certain stage it's necessary to sit down and talk with the Russians, yes, I have no doubt about it. But the crucial question is, has Putin understood that his imperialistic view, that he can occupy a country, that he will fail with that? And so far the Russians have not understood the lesson.
Only if they do, he says, can negotiations ever begin with Moscow. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap the top stories, the WHO says China's hospitals appear to be filling up as COVID-19 surges. The UK's Health Secretary reportedly wants to fast-track a pay rise for NHS workers to head off further strikes. Japan's approving new rules to allow nuclear plants to operate longer than the previous 60 years. And Football Australia's issued more bans over the violent pitch invasion during an A-League match. That's the latest feature story news. Ollie Barrett reporting.
It's the story that's stunning the tech world. Despite his age, 6-year-old data entry prodigy Jeffrey Peters is already entertaining offers from dozens of major temp agencies. Experts say Jeffrey's abilities to sit still and perform mind-numbing tasks in Excel and Word for hours on end rank with a freelance worker 3 times his age. But Jeffrey's mom says that she knew he was special from early on.
I've always thought that Jeffrey was different from the other kids. He started wearing glasses for computer strain when he was just 3.5, and he already has some pretty significant tendinitis.
I've always wanted to work at Maverick Recruiting.
The data entry whiz is at the center of a bidding war between industry titans like Workforce Solutions and Metropolitan Staffing, both offering lavish perks like starting salaries of up to $15,000 and a cramped cubicle shared with only 2 other temps. Jeffrey's parents say that given the generous offers he's already received, he could be well on the way to affording a dingy rundown apartment of his own.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
Hey, welcome to Free Talk Live. Phones are open if you want to join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. We're doing a live Saturday episode here. 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Ian.
And the Reverend Captain Kickass is here.
We understand Peakless Mountaineer is on his way in, perhaps experienced some traffic delays.
Hey, before we get started, I just want to remind everybody, because this is a live show, and it's Christmas Eve for those who
that's right. We are here
celebrate.
live on Christmas Eve.
It's not too late to put up your COVID decorations.
What is that?
Well, it's all the COVID decorations you have from last year that you took down. You can still put them up.
Like what?
You know, I don't know, hang some masks, you know, unroll some mandates, you know, get a wreath full of mandates.
I hadn't even thought about COVID today, Captain. Thanks so much for bringing it to my attention. I didn't have to see anyone with a mask on today because no one's out on the roads.
Yeah.
There's no one, you know, no person driving alone in their car with a mask on. I was completely disconnected from all things COVID until you brought it up.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm sorry.
A nice Christmas
simultaneously.
Gift. Thank you. It is Ian, Captain Kickass here. Phones open at 603-283-6160. We're actually going right to the phones.
Let's do it.
And then we're going to talk about conspiracy theorists who are being labeled as terrorists in New Zealand, and that doesn't mean it won't happen here.
Oh, it's like a preview.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But first, Rick is on the line. He actually called in 15 minutes before we started. Rick in Oregon, you're on Free Talk Live. Well, he's listening out on KBBR, where I think they start us a little early and they play like an hour from yesterday. Anyway, Rick, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird situation with the radio here and all that. Anyway, I was calling in. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Thanks.
Just wanted to say, I think you got hung on the jury thing with Ian. They convicted you based on the fact of the ignorance of cryptocurrency. I don't know what percentage of the U.S. population even understands that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really low. I don't understand much about it, but just, you know, I have an open mind about stuff, and I kind of think, the ignorance got people thinking, oh, this can't be good. I mean, it's
Yeah, I mean, that could have been a factor. You're referring, for listeners that are maybe just tuning in here, they only get us on Saturday nights. This week I was convicted by a jury of my so-called peers of 8 counts, all 8 out of 8 counts that I was facing in trial at the Crypto 6 trial this week. And I think you may be right to some extent, Rick. There may have been a lot of uncertainty and confusion surrounding cryptocurrency. Plus, you can roll in the fact that the Sam Bankman fraud guy was
all over the news,
heavy in the news, and that has really been a real albatross around the neck of the cryptocurrency industry.
That didn't help you at all.
Well, I also think that this jury was in a hurry because of Christmas. I also think that they just did not care. They bought what the government was selling, hook, line, and sinker.
They had to have.
They took about 5 hours of deliberation, a couple hours after closing arguments, which was enough time for them to select a chairman and figure out the schedule they were going to try and adhere to, and that's about it. They came in the next day.
Apparently, they took a few smoke breaks too, from what I was told.
They came in the next day, got some free coffee and breakfast, decided, hey, let's get another free lunch out of this thing and hang this guy and get the F out of here so we can go Christmas shopping.
Yeah, I've been in trouble with law myself. And avoided juries just because I grew up in a government town. So I knew my background, everybody knew my history and whatever. I just thought I'd go with the judge and all their BS and get a settlement, a plea deal. Because I knew if I went to trial, the town would hang me. So knowing that and knowing, you should probably do maybe a survey on how many people are intelligible about cryptocurrency, because I believe it's a very low
it is.
People.
Oh, it is. Yes,
it's definitely low.
Your jury pool was uneducated on what they were dealing with.
It's worse than that, though, because the judge gave them specific instructions to review all of the evidence for each count. Now, if there's 8 counts, it's going to take me, just as an individual, probably at more than 5 hours anyway, to review all of the evidence presented during the trial for each count.
Well, they're not obligated to.
I know, but the judge instructed them to do so.
Sure.
And so it seems to me like that's what they did. They went back to, how many think he's guilty? And everyone's like, we all do, and screw this guy.
I would think that meant that there was somebody who didn't vote guilty the first time around, because otherwise they'd have been back in an hour, right? So it's
that's where a good judge. That's where a good judge, one that knows the law, knows that crypto isn't really under the Constitution. It's a completely unregulated entity. Should nullify the jury's verdict or whatever, but you're probably not looking at that.
Well, we're gonna appeal this thing. Yeah. We have motions in to dismiss the counts because the prosecution did not prove their case in any of the counts. But
I hope you do.
They still got their conviction. Rick, anything else you want to share tonight?
No, I just wish you luck.
Thank you.
I hope you guys get that. It's going to be a tough fight because the cards, when you get before the court, it's you and your lawyer against the whole taxpayer system. And, just like the guys, the Oath Keepers and everybody else who got in trouble back east there, them and their lawyer against the whole machine. So
yep, and that machine's got a lot of money, an unlimited supply of money that the taxpayers fund for it, and that's what they can throw at you. And they've spent millions on this trial and its investigation as well. Thank you, Rick, for the call tonight. I appreciate your thoughts. The number here, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. Now, joining us, we have
Peakless Mountaineer.
Peakless, welcome to the program. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And as Captain pointed out, we are indeed live here on Christmas Eve. The phones are open, and you can bring up absolutely anything that you want to discuss. Since he mentioned it, I've actually had a story in show prep for a little bit here about millennials. He was talking about how people are not comfortable with cryptocurrency. They don't know a lot about it. You would think millennials would be more so comfortable than your average American or Gen Xer or somebody older. And the headline here from CNBC.com is only about 30% of millennials are comfortable investing in crypto. And that's down from around 50% in 2021. So a huge drop.
I kind of don't like the whole like generational titles, right?
Sure.
Because
I find
to me,
them quite useful.
Well, to me, it's just another way to sow division. You know, another way for people to hate each other.
You know, I think the boomers have it coming at this point. Honestly, they screwed us, man. They screwed your generation. They screwed my generation.
I don't know if my parents screwed me.
Okay,
They're boomers.
Look, I'm not saying your individual parents screwed you. I'm not saying everyone in that generation is a bad person. I'm saying that generation was so mind-bendingly irresponsible that we have no chance of ever, like, owning a house, for example. Like, the American dream is gone because of what they have done with their money. Because what they have done with their votes, because how they have run the country.
Were
and
they that much worse
world.
than whoever? What was the generation before the boomers?
That would be the so-called greatest generation.
Were they any worse than the greatest generation? I mean,
Yes.
wasn't the greatest generation involved in the huge welfare program from FDR?
Warmongering, right? The whole 9 yards.
Well, they did manage to bring in some terrible programs. I'll grant you that. But, I mean, nothing compared to what they've done now. Because
I think
if
the
you look
boomers
at
are conceived as worse because there was more of them.
Right.
Okay.
So that's one of the big issues there. You had this massive bulge in voting power. So they got everything they ever wanted. And that's a really weird thing to have one voting block that gets everything ever. And that's what they had.
And they are still in charge.
Yeah,
they
are still in
things.
charge. That's part of like why we are currently at risk of nuclear annihilation, which no one seems to want to talk about. The fact that we're still teetering on the brink of annihilation. So
yeah, there was some news
that.
this week about the Satan II missile over in Russia that they're talking about.
Satan II?
Yeah, that's what they call the
They've
thing,
upgraded
apparently.
from Satan 1?
Yeah.
Wow.
Satan 2.0.
Sounds like a really good way to end the world, doesn't it?
The number here is 603-283-6160. You can join us. You can bring up whatever you want. We'll talk about conspiracy theorists being labeled as terrorists in New Zealand, and don't think it can't happen here. That's on the way. Plus, Edward Snowden is saying he told you so again. I'll tell you what about coming up. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open if you want to join us here. It's the live Christmas Eve edition of the program.
I'd like to point out that as the resident bearded fat man, I am real, unlike the other guy.
Hey, I'll have you know that Santa Claus is a very real person, sort of. You see, he's the spirit of generosity, and he lives at the top of the world, and from time to time, he possesses people so that they will do generous things. That is why you get a bicycle in the middle of winter when you can't use it.
Okay.
Speaking of bearded men, you guys are going to be in here later tonight as the midnight hour is crossed into Christmas Day. So you guys are going to take our listeners into Christmas Day.
That's right.
Late tonight at Beard Talk Live, which
ho, ho, bitches.
will be happening.
Practically hear the tiny hooves on the roof.
At 10:30 Eastern Time is when you can start listening to Beard Talk Live. And you can do it on our video streaming platform. So follow us on Odyssey over at video.freetalklive.com. That's where you can subscribe to our Odyssey channel. And then you can watch the actual program happen live at watch.freetalklive.com after 10:30 Eastern. That'll be tonight. I believe nobody will be joining you as well.
I believe so.
Our co-host. So you can call in here tonight. We are here live, and the phones are open as always at 603-283-6160. According to CNBC.com, since we're talking about crypto a little bit here, our caller kind of led us into that. Cryptocurrency's popularity with American investors is on the decline. In 2022, only about 21% of Americans feel comfortable investing in cryptocurrency. That's down from 35%.
Yeah, because they're afraid the feds are going to bash in their door with tanks and military people.
Yeah, legitimate concern.
That seems to be the only thing majorly driving the skepticism of cryptocurrency. Yeah, no, after your conviction,
the Sam Bankman thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying like that and like all and the library thing,
getting sued and losing by the SEC.
And have you heard where XRP is?
No, I have not heard any
not
updates.
XRP, Ripple, the corporation that's associated with them.
I know they're still in the lawsuit, last I heard, but I don't know what the case status is.
But yeah, so I mean,
it doesn't look good, that's for sure. I mean, if it's going to be anything like the library case, it's not going to be good at all.
So yeah, people are hearing about these lawsuits left and right, and they're like, well, I'm not touching this until it's legal.
Until it settles down. Yeah.
Well, and this is why I have said since the beginning, we will never see regulatory clarity. The second there is like a clear set of rules, there are so many people who want to dive into this space, but will not do it until there's a clear set of rules.
Well, the problem is, of course, the United States government and other governments are attempting to shoehorn new technology into existing legislation.
Right,
And
rather than pass new legislation.
It's going poorly.
Right.
You know, it would be like trying to regulate email using whatever legislation there is for regular letters.
Well,
like
it's going poorly
letters.
for us little guys. It's going great for the government, who is just locking people up left and right and destroying businesses
And
like
lives.
the Library Corporation. So Library, for listeners that don't know, we just told you about Odyssey. It's a video streaming platform that was originally a part of Library. They spun it off into its own corporation just in time, by the way. So Odyssey's sort of separate now from Library. But what Library is a media sharing protocol that allows you to share not just videos, but audio, PDF, other things.
Yep.
You can share through this protocol. It's blockchain based. It is sort of like a torrent-based thing as well, without getting too deep into the weeds of how it works. It works very well. And it's been around for more than half a decade now, I think, at this point. And then a couple of years ago, the SEC decided to file a lawsuit against Library, accusing it of offering a quote-unquote unlicensed or unregistered security in the form of the token that kind of is the guts of the system. It's what makes the system go, basically. When you upload a video to Library, you have to pay a very small amount of the library credits in order to make that possible. You can also use library credits as sort of like a pass. So if you want to take a video that you have on your site on Library and you want to restrict the access to it, you can say, I think someone needs to pay 10 library credits, which is way under $1 right now, 10 library credits to be able to watch this video. Most people, I don't think, do that, but it is a feature. It is an option. So the credits kind of make the system go, and it makes it possible. So they're what you might call a utility token.
Mm-hmm.
But despite the fact that they have utility, the SEC made the argument at a New Hampshire district court in a civil trial against Library that it was a so-called security because Library did X, Y, and Z when the thing first launched, and so therefore it's a security, and they won. And now they're going to not only bankrupt Library, the corporation, the company, but they're going to they want more than just bankrupting them.
Right.
They want them to pay like 200% of their value or something like that.
Doesn't that type of ruling make things like Chuck E. Cheese token securities?
Yes, actually.
That's the kind of scary thing that could come out of this.
What they've done with this is actually mind-blowing, because like anything that is expected to raise in value is a security.
As long as you say
like
it is.
Everything.
I think if you were to be able to release the Chuck E. Cheese token without actually suggesting at any point from the Chuck E. Cheese Corporation or anybody connected tangentially to the Chuck E. Cheese Corporation that, hey, you might want to get a few of these because they could go up in value someday. If you were to say that, then they would go ahead and bring that lawsuit, and they would absolutely win it, because that's essentially what happened here. Was apparently somebody posted in a Library Reddit that might have been related to somebody who was within Library or whatever, and they speculated that this could go up in value. Oh, well, now it's a security.
Yeah, so heaven help you if Chuck E. Cheese says, we are going to be getting new systems in. There will be more games, which means this credit will be more valuable.
Yep, that's it.
Oh,
done.
Sorry.
You're out of business.
Gary Gensler's going to be up your bottom about this now.
Yeah. And
except that's never going to happen because it's just selectively used to target what they don't like.
That's right.
Oh,
the cryptocurrency
you're using
industry.
this for free speech. Oh, no. Give me twice what you're worth.
That's from what I understanding, that's somewhere where the so-called negotiations are, the gun-to-your-head negotiations that they're doing here for the so-called settlement in this case, where both Library and the SEC have to come up to some kind of quote-unquote agreement, or the judge will step in and make the decision for them.
Yeah.
So that's where I believe they're currently at. It looks really bad right now. The good news, if there is any good news in this situation, is that Library is a protocol. That means it's not a platform. That means it is just simply code that anyone can operate that can continue running, and hopefully will, in the absence of the Library Corporation. So when and if Library goes down in flames, thanks to the SEC and the federal court system, the library concept, the library program, the blockchain, all of those things will continue moving forward. and maybe we'll see something like a decentralized autonomous organization spring up to
That'd be my preference.
replace the corporation. I don't know if there's been any public discussion about anything like that. I'm by no means an insider at all with LBRY. We have a channel. We post our stuff there, and that's about the extent of our knowledge beyond just knowing Jeremy Kauffman. I mean, we have some contact with him. But,
so far, the rules seem to be that if you are along with what they're trying to do, and you steal less than $10 billion, they won't come after you.
The number here is 603-283-6160, and again, numbers of Americans that are comfortable investing in cryptocurrency down significantly since 2021. Is crypto over? This is Free Talk Live.
Gasoline prices are one thing, but are you paying too much for oil? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. AARP tells members most oil change shops slap a sticker on your windshield summoning you back in 3,000 miles. Check your owner's manual. Many newer cars use a synthetic oil that needs changing far less frequently. And keep tires properly inflated. Otherwise, you lose miles per gallon, as you will if you got a lot of junk in the trunk. Why haul around unnecessary pounds? You yourself might lose a few pounds if you simply grab the first parking space you see and walk a little more. It's estimated Americans spend some 17 hours and waste hundreds of dollars each year looking for a parking space. Get some steps in. You'll spend less on health care. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. The World Health Organization says China's hospitals appear to be filling up as a latest surge of COVID-19 gathers pace. Beijing insists no one died of COVID on Wednesday, and patients in intensive care remain relatively low. The WHO, though, says it's very concerned about the situation after China moved away from its strict zero COVID stance. UK Health Secretary Steve Barclay reportedly wants to fast-track a pay rise for NHS workers to try and head off further strike action. Nurses and ambulance workers are among those who've taken industrial action over pay in recent days. On Friday, strikes by Border Force workers will begin. Travel editor of The Sun newspaper, Lisa Minot, says they could have a major impact.
Bosses are saying they could actually be forced to close airports. There's 7 million people due to travel over the festive period, and I think the second round of strike action between the 28th and the 31st could be the real pinch point, as a lot of people will be returning back to the UK from after a Christmas break, could actually see that there is going to be serious delays.
Japan's approving a new regulation allowing nuclear plants to operate even longer than the previous 60 years. Japan's government's pushing for continued use of older reactors in a bid to meet its carbon reduction goals for 2030. Nora Weineck reports from Tokyo.
This change could allow Japan to restart many of its aging nuclear power plants, which have been offline since the triple reactor meltdown at the Fukushima No. 1 power plant in 2011. The decision comes just a day before the government is set to decide on a new energy policy, which is expected to emphasize the usage of nuclear power plants. However, realizing this plan may still take some time, as legislation is needed to implement the change, and the opposition is expected to strongly oppose the move. The announcement comes just after a local appeal to stop operations at a 46-year-old reactor in central Japan was rejected by a district court. Japan's government aims to raise the share of energy provided by nuclear power plants from 6.9% to over 20 by 2030. Nora Weineck, Tokyo.
Football Australia has issued more bans over the violent pitch invasion during an A-League match played in Melbourne. 8 more fans have been banned from attending Football Australia sanctioned matches and registering as a football participant. Sean Bindley reports.
Those punished are aged between 18 and 28 years old, with the ban spanning 5 to 25 years for a variety of violations. Earlier this week, lifetime bans were handed to 2 men over the pitch invasion during the Melbourne derby between City and Victory. It's also been revealed 4 people on banned lists were prevented from entering the stadium to watch the match last Saturday night. Football Australia continues to work with Victoria Police to identify others involved. So far, 13 alleged offenders have been charged.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. It is the live Christmas Eve episode of Free Talk Live. And by the way, we are going to be live tomorrow as well. Captain, you're going to be heading up the Christmas Day episode of Free Talk Live. We'll also be live New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, because that's just what we do here. We really like doing radio for you to listen to. We especially like it when you participate. That's why our phones are always open.
The message of freedom, peace, and prosperity doesn't take a day off.
That's a fact.
That's a fact. Now, would you consider yourself jolly?
Not today.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
I gotta
feel ya.
I gotta admit, man, your whole trial thing is
bit
just
of a bummer, huh?
All right, no jolly fat man on Christmas.
I'm feeling a bit dispirited.
Yeah.
As a result, I mean, like, I should have known in retrospect. I allowed myself to get my hopes up.
Oh man!
Based on the discombobulated presentation that the prosecution had. They were all over the place. Yeah. They barely made a point. They bored the crap out of everybody.
They made your case for you half the time. And everything seemed to be like, oh, maybe there will actually be justice in a U.S. court.
And like, if anything, and you know, I've got a lot of retrospect about what I think might, should have, whatever. But if anything, you were hyper vigilant in making sure that yes, your position is unique, but you did comply with all of the things that you researched that you had to do what you were doing, like legally, right? You had all the certificates, you had, you filed with the state as a church, right? All the hoops you had to jump through in your position. You did all of those things. Your position's unique because you are a church, but considering that, like, the evidence overwhelmingly supports your position. But
that's what you would think. The
jury didn't give a crap. They were like, nope, screw this guy in particular. And let's go do some Christmas shopping after we get our free lunch.
BullionMax.com/FTL. Regardless of what happens in the courts, they're going to screw your money system hard. Yeah. And they're doing it as we speak. It's one of the things we're talking about here tonight. Yeah, crypto's cool and all, but you know what? Something's much more reliable historically. Because crypto, you don't know what's going to happen day to day, but gold and silver historically have been the most stable assets in recorded history. And we're big fans of things like the gold back here on Free Talk Live. You can get a free gold back when you order the Bullion Max Silver Starter Kit at employee pricing at bullionmax.com/FTL. You don't have to deal with a salesperson. Your precious metals will ship fully insured directly to your home. It's super fast. It's easy. Obviously, you can't get it in time for Christmas at this point, but 5 ounces of silver from the world's most popular mints. This makes a great gift anytime, or a great gift for yourself. Now, you do only get one per household, so keep that in mind. If you've already tapped out on this, well, make sure you explore the rest of Bullion Max's inventory. They're always getting new products in there. I'm getting their emails regularly. They've always got something really cool going on there. Of course, they got the new silver back, which is a really cool collectible that's related to the gold back. You can't miss this. It's bullionmax.com/FTL. Get yours. It is limited time, and because you're a Free Talk Live listener, you get the employee pricing. That's bullionmax.com/FTL. Let's go to Tom. He's in Massachusetts. You're on Free Talk Live, Tom.
I just wanted to remind everybody, as you're sitting down tonight, maybe enjoying a cup of coffee or maybe a hot chocolate or eggnog, whatever you do, don't stir it. If you want sugar and cream with your coffee, put that in first like they do at the donut shop, and then fill the cup. Don't stir your drinks tonight.
Why?
Because Santa Claus won't come. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house.
Not a creature was stirring.
Yeah.
Not even a mouse.
Thanks, Tom.
My God.
Which, last I knew, are expert spoon operators.
I think it was a Tom and Jerry cartoon where they had like the mouse, and he's like, hey, I'm a mouse and I'm stirring, and he was actually stirring like a cauldron or something.
So people in the world of crypto, it's looking pretty dire right now. I asked the question before we went away there, is crypto over? You've got now 21% of Americans that feel comfortable investing in crypto, down from 35% last year. That's a significant drop.
I think Americans...
It's worthless. Give it all to me.
This is actually a statement about the status of, quote, Americans, unquote. And these are people who supposedly believe in the, quote, American way of life, unquote, which supposedly is about freedom. And so the quote unquote Americans obviously don't support freedom because cryptocurrency is the freest of all currencies that you could possibly use. It is separated from state in every way that it possibly can be. Using cryptocurrency puts your transactions outside of the purview of statists who continuously bomb people and have since I've been alive, since well before I've been alive. In the words of Mark Edge, it is one of the only, if not the only way that you can currently wage peace in this world.
Well, I think we're going to see crypto adoption be the exact opposite of where the money is now. Like right now, the entrenched financial interests, they're benefiting from what's called a Cantillon effect. So all of the money gets in their pocket first, then they get to spend it, and then there's a bunch of new money, so prices go up. But they've already spent it before the prices went up.
So they got the better deal.
Right. So that's how the entire scam is set. So so there's individuals within the U.S. that applies to, and it applies from country to country. So who's going to benefit the most? Africa, the poorest countries. They're going to leapfrog straight through the entire financial system as it was set up over the last 100+ years. They're going to just jump straight over that in the same way that they're jumping straight over the telegraph wires.
Right, yeah, like in Africa right now, they have solar-powered cell phone towers as their infrastructure, right? So whereas the United States has cables, lines, that the whole internet network is based on the railway network, and that's where all the large fiber optic cables are buried that carry a large amount of traffic. Well, Africa doesn't have that. So they're going to just jump over all of that. They're going to skip, from tribal ages right into the wireless age, skipping over all of the analog infrastructure that the United States had to sort of work its way up to before it got into wireless technology. So the adoption of wireless technology will be their infrastructure, and therefore cell phones will be their first big technological achievement as far as
they've had that
mass.
for years.
Well, I know, but as far as masses adopting it, and thus there's, correct me if I'm wrong, 30 million unbanked.
Well, the other thing about Africa,
it's I think it's actually like 3 trillion on the planet.
Wow,
are either unbanked or underbanked.
3 trillion?
That's correct.
3 trillion what?
Unbanked or underbanked, people who have no
3 trillion
access.
human beings on the planet. You mean billion?
Oh, sorry.
Billion, okay.
Sorry, I've been dealing with money
billion?
so long. I'm like, wait, trillion's the one that matters, right?
It's hard after so many zeros.
Right.
There's basically a boatload of people who have no access to any kind of banking services whatsoever. Their first exposure to banking services will be cryptocurrency.
Well, actually, the thing is about Africa, one of the interesting things that was being talked about years ago with crypto was the fact that they have so much cell phone penetration in Africa. It's been a thing for the last, couple decades. And cell phones are cheap. The services are cheap. Essentially, the market's unrestricted. So the competition has been hot in a lot of these African countries for cell phone service. So this has been going on a long time. And interestingly, the African people, because they've had these phones, have been trading phone minutes as an electronic currency since a long time ago. So these guys are primed for cryptocurrency. They know what it's like to trade electronic currency, or something that essentially is a stand-in for an electronic currency. They were buying things with phone minutes way back in the day, and when I say that, I mean like early days of crypto.
They were doing both cell phone minutes and those long distance cards. Right? You go to the 7-Eleven or whatever and get a card that's good for 5 hours or whatever, 100 minutes or whatever. You could buy a card. They were also trading those.
The foundation of Americans' power at this point in history, since we've been failing militarily left and right, is its money system. So it's going to jealously guard its power over money. And where can it do it the most damage to, peaceful people trying to transact peacefully is in the U.S. So the U.S. is going to be the slowest adopter of Bitcoin.
According to the local Bitcoin statistics, the last time I looked, which was a little while ago, but fairly recently, in the last year or so, Nigeria is the #1 country on the planet for people buying Bitcoin. And Venezuela is #2. All right, so what's that going to do for those people in the long run? There's more coming up here. It is Free Talk Live. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. forkfest.party.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open here, and you can join the show. The number, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Welcome to the Christmas Eve edition of Free Talk Live. In the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
Beakless Mountaineer.
And the captain.
And we've got a little gift for you, dear listener. Coming up, you've got to wait a week. We're delaying the delivery of this. We have to. It's not really a Christmas gift. It's it is a gift.
It's a gift nonetheless.
It is a gift in a different form. You won't be able to unwrap it, and it's not going to be a surprise because we've already told you what it is. But I'm going to remind you that in 1 week from tonight, it will be the last night of our, what we call in the business, old clock. So in the radio business, we follow a clock, meaning that there's certain things that have to happen within an hour. there has to be the top of the hour news, and that lasts until a certain time, and then there has to be a certain number of breaks with a certain number of minutes that local stations and we and our network can play advertisements, because that's just the way syndicated talk radio works.
Right.
And we haven't ever changed our clock ever
That's
since
what they call industry standard.
Yes, ever since. Well, all clocks are different, so there's no standard per se in what the clock has to look like. But there's certain things that are pretty common.
Yeah.
And 4 breaks an hour are pretty common. We're going to 2. Starting on January 1st. Free Talk Live is going to not just have 2 breaks an hour. We're not like making the breaks longer, those 2 breaks.
Slashed in half.
They're going to be the exact same length. They're going to be the top and the bottom of the hour. And the ones that are at the 15 and the 45 roughly are going to disappear. So we're going to have 2 show segments an hour of over 20 minutes a piece. We're actually going to get 8 more minutes of talk time per hour. It's a 20% increase in show time every single hour.
Now with 20% more show.
That's right. Good luck finding that anywhere else, right, as far as on the radio is concerned.
Yeah.
So,
and doesn't that like cut our commercial breakage in practically in half?
I think so. Yeah. I think it is cutting it in half,
so, like,
actually.
Half the commercials? Who doesn't want that?
Exactly. And it'll actually be less than half for us, because what we call the network ads are going to go down just 2 minutes an hour.
Right.
So we are cutting the bulk of our own advertising out of the show. And our local stations are going to lose some too, but we did it even Steven. Local stations always get more ads on our clock than we do, so they're still going to have more, because we got to give them something, right?
Yeah, sure.
They got to have something. That's just the way it is. It's what they call the barter deal in the business. Like, they get to play their ads on our air, and they don't have to pay a local guy to sit in there at night, right? So it's a big money saver to run the show. And so the idea is, let's make Free Talk Live a little bit more competitive with the internet, right? Because in the old days, radio didn't have any significant audio competition besides somebody's cassette deck or CD player in their car.
Right.
And then in the last 15, 20 years, that's especially in the last 5, that's really started to change. People's listening habits, we know it, are starting to change. The radio business is a slow dinosaur, right? Like, they've been around for a long time. They've got the incumbency. They've got listeners that have been around for forever, and they figure they're going to be able to coast. They're starting to wake up and realize that they are not going to be able to coast their way to success anymore. It's time to seriously, start competing with new media. And the fact is, you go and tune into some new media show, you're lucky if you hear one advertisement in an hour. Right? Like, I mean, not that I listen to a lot of content, but it's the impression that I get. And people are used to short advertisements, that sort of thing. So we're cutting our ads. We're still going to be a radio show first and foremost, but we're going to have deeper segments. We're going to have longer segments that are not as interrupted. They're not being interrupted every 10 minutes.
Yep.
So it's going to be a different feel. It's going to be interesting, and we're just going to throw ourselves right into it on January 1st without any, no practice rounds. We're just doing it. So.
I'm not afraid.
No dress rehearsal.
Yeah. Well, you guys did do one dress rehearsal on Beard Talk Live a few weeks ago, and that was so we could test the show clock just to make sure it didn't break in the middle of it.
Because Beard Talk Live doesn't normally have but one break in it.
You take it whenever you want to.
Well, usually at the halfway point, but it did sort of interrupt our flow. Because we're used to having the longer segments and that. So Free Talk Live is going to become more congruous with longer segments, better conversation.
Correct.
Which I think is better for the listener.
I think so too. So that's what's coming in the new year. You got about 1 week left, and we're going to make a big change, and I'm excited about it. I'm really looking forward to it.
So before we go on to a new topic, it doesn't really connect to anything else, but I just want to throw it out there for the listeners in case anyone is really curious about the Hunter Biden laptop. There's a massive 700-page report from a place called Marco Polo. And if anyone really wants to dig into it, it's on bidenlaptopreport.marcopolousa.org.
And what are they doing? They're just looking at what's on the laptop?
What is on that friggin' laptop? Because we've spent plenty of time talking about how the FBI suppressed whether this was true or not.
They
how
did.
This was oh no, it's Russia. Russia has definitely planted this thing.
Nope, that was a lie.
I haven't had the time to look through it myself, but if anyone out there is curious, I just want to throw that link out there.
Interesting.
Because I'm sure there are some interesting things in there.
All right. Plug the link one more time.
It is BidenLaptopReport.MarcoPoloUSA.org.
All right. Check that out. BidenLaptopReport.MarcoPoloUSA.org.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to continue here. There's some more highlights from this study that they did, looking at Americans and whether or not they're interested in investing in cryptocurrency. Numbers are down a lot, from 35% in 2021 down to 21% of Americans that are what they say comfortable investing in cryptocurrency. I mean, that is.
I would imagine that most Americans aren't comfortable investing, period.
Right.
That could be true, but regardless, it's still down, and that's an important thing here. They say here the decline is unsurprising, considering nearly $2 trillion in value has been wiped off the crypto market since November of 2021. James Royal, the principal reporter at Bankrate, tells CNBC, quote, traders of any asset are fair weather fans, and with major cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum down more than 70% from their all-time highs, it's little wonder the shine has come off these coins.
Are they talking about investing as in these investment vehicles that have been manufactured by the banks with things like wrapped Bitcoin and that kind of a thing? Or are they talking about Americans are afraid to just go ahead and buy some?
That's what it sounds
as
like,
an investment, because it sounds to me more like they're talking about they're afraid to go through the banks and get their Bitcoin quote-unquote investment products.
No, that's not what I'm hearing here.
Okay.
No, they're talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this has a lot to do with just where asset prices are anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, right now there's this quantitative tightening. You know, they're bringing the rates up. They're bringing the rates up. They're bringing the rates up. They're not buying their own treasuries. So there's just less money that is being thrown into the world. There's fewer U.S. dollars and fewer U.S. dollars because taxes aren't going anywhere, but they turned the money printers off. So all of the asset prices have been plummeting. And historically, what happens when you turn that around is when there is a sudden dip in asset prices, in land, in stocks, in all of that. And basically, Bitcoin has been treated as if it is a super risky tech stock.
Well, and that's what they point out here. Many of young investors' interest in crypto was due to the, quote, lottery ticket atmosphere, unquote, where it appeared you could make a lot of money quickly, said the spokes guy here. He says many young investors don't understand what they're buying, but they can see the price going up, and so they want in. And this is the big critique that a lot of us... Right. This is the big critique that a lot of us have had for years now on the cryptocurrency marketplace, is that there's this huge attraction to the number go up person, the kind of person who doesn't understand what cryptocurrency or Bitcoin was supposed to be, what its intention was as sort of peer-to-peer electronic cash. But they just see the number go up and they want to get in. I think, well, I got to get in on this. And then, of course, usually by the time you figure out you got to get in on something, it's too late.
At the same time, a savvy investor would know to buy the dip, buy when the price is low, which it is now.
Yeah. And I expect, honestly, that it will be low for the next couple of years because so far it has always followed a 4-year cycle. So it rockets after the rewards for mining get cut in half.
The halvening?
Yes,
Yep.
the halvening.
That's coming up next year, right?
Yeah.
2024.
Yep. That's
2024.
Well, yeah,
okay.
in 2024 is when that's expected to happen. So the next massive bull run's probably going to be not until 2025. And it's going to take a lot of people by surprise because they'll be like, whoa, where'd
that
this
come from?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, when those guys were talking about it at the end of 2022, we should have got in.
Yeah. But the nice thing about that is, like, the entire crypto sphere is like Signal now. You can actually hear people say actual things because the people who are still involved in this,
they're the hardcore people.
Yeah, they're the hardcore people.
The
they
builders,
know what they're talking
the
about.
programmers.
Right. They're actually in it. They know that this is a long-term project.
Yeah, you're right. The price dips clear out the investor types, a lot of them. Clear off the playing board. And
Bye-bye, speculators.
The serious players are still there, making crypto better, advancing the ball. Programmatically. The number is 603-283-6160. We're going to talk about just trying to find some food in Cuba and Greece and more coming up.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. The World Health Organization says China's hospitals appear to be filling up as a latest surge of COVID-19 gathers pace. Beijing insists no one died of COVID on Wednesday, and patients in intensive care remain relatively low. The WHO, though, says it's very concerned about the situation after China moved away from its strict zero COVID stance. UK Health Secretary Steve Barclay reportedly wants to fast-track a pay rise for NHS workers to try and head off further strike action. Nurses and ambulance workers are among those who've taken industrial action over pay in recent days. On Friday, strikes by Border Force workers will begin. Travel editor of The Sun newspaper, Lisa Minot, says they could have a major impact.
Bosses are saying they could actually be forced to close airports. There's 7 million people due to travel over the festive period, and I think the second round of strike action between the 28th and the 31st could be the real pinch point, as a lot of people will be returning back to the UK from after a Christmas break, could actually see that there is going to be serious delays.
Japan's approving a new regulation allowing nuclear plants to operate even longer than the previous 60 years. Japan's government's pushing for continued use of older reactors in a bid to meet its carbon reduction goals for 2030. Nora Weineck reports from Tokyo.
This change could allow Japan to restart many of its aging nuclear power plants, which have been offline since the triple reactor meltdown at the Fukushima No. 1 power plant in 2011. The decision comes just a day before the government is set to decide on a new energy policy, which is expected to emphasize the usage of nuclear power plants. However, realizing this plan may still take some time, as legislation is needed to implement the change, and the opposition is expected to strongly oppose the move. The announcement comes just after a local appeal to stop operations at a 46-year-old reactor in central Japan was rejected by a district court. Japan's government aims to raise the share of energy provided by nuclear power plants from 6.9% to over 20 by 2030. Nora Weineck, Tokyo.
Football Australia has issued more bans over the violent pitch invasion during an A-League match played in Melbourne. 8 more fans have been banned from attending Football Australia sanctioned matches and registering as a football participant. Sean Bindley reports.
Those punished are aged between 18 and 28 years old, with the ban spanning 5 to 25 years for a variety of violations. Earlier this week, lifetime bans were handed to 2 men over the pitch invasion during the Melbourne derby between City and Victory. It's also been revealed 4 people on banned lists were prevented from entering the stadium to watch the match last Saturday night. Football Australia continues to work with Victoria Police to identify others involved. So far, 13 alleged offenders have been charged.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, with more today on the German perspective of the situation in Ukraine after President Biden announced another $2 billion in military assistance for Kiev during President Volodymyr Zelensky's Wednesday visit to Washington. The German government is among those in Europe holding out the possibility of a negotiated settlement between Russia and Ukraine and argues that it's important to keep channels of communication open with Vladimir Putin, despite US claims that he's a war criminal.
We need to be patient. We need to give Ukraine the necessary time and make sure that the West stays united and supplies Ukraine with what is needed.
Miguel Berger is the German ambassador to Britain and says with Russia preparing for a spring offensive in Ukraine, the world may have to wait for negotiations to occur.
The Ukrainians know that this is going to come once the winter is over. And what we have to do is really to supply them with the maximum amount of support we can give to them. If at a certain stage it's necessary to sit down and talk with the Russians, yes, I have no doubt about it. But the crucial question is, has Putin understood that his imperialistic view, that he can occupy a country, that he will fail with that? And so far the Russians have not understood the lesson.
Only if they do, he says, can negotiations ever begin with Moscow. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap the top stories, the WHO says China's hospitals appear to be filling up as COVID-19 surges. The UK's Health Secretary reportedly wants to fast-track a pay rise for NHS workers to head off further strikes. Japan's approving new rules to allow nuclear plants to operate longer than the previous 60 years. And Football Australia has issued more bans over the violent pitch invasion during an A-League match. That's the latest feature story news. Ollie Barrett reporting.
To help reduce you to a state of constant panic about a hypothetical doomsday scenario you have no ability to control, we now present The Onion Explains Nuclear Proliferation. The world's nuclear facilities are safeguarded by a bunch of really huge guys. We're talking absolutely jacked. With one of these muscle freaks stationed outside every missile silo and uranium processing plant worldwide, there's no way to get anywhere close to a nuclear complex without getting your ass beat. This nuclear facility in Siberia is rumored to be among the most secure in the world because they have like 6 of these. And you can just forget about hijacking a nuclear submarine too, because all of them have these totally roided up dudes that'll just swim up to you and choke you out.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you may take control of the airwaves. You can bring up anything that you want to discuss. The number is 603-283-6160. Kick off the second hour of the show. Tonight it's Ian.
People's Mountaineer.
I'm the Reverend Captain Kickass.
Coming up, Captain Kickass has a story about New Zealand. Wants people snitching on their friends and family, co-workers that might be conspiracy theorists, and they want to go after them for being terrorists. That's right. As well. We're going to talk about that on the way. Plus, Peekles, you've got some news about banking stuff, like the Bank of International Settlements allowing cryptocurrency ownership amongst central banks. Also, Greece is going to be offering a 10% subsidy, welfare, for people for buying food. And I've got a story about food being hard to find at all in Cuba. So all of those things are things we can talk about here on the live Christmas Eve edition of Free Talk Live. But first, we go to the phones and to your calls and thoughts. Sahid calling us from Maryland. Sahid, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
I just had a quick question. Thanks. So I just had a quick question about interest. I was curious what you guys thought about it, and in like Afghanistan, how you kind of like deal with interest. Because in Islam, interest is kind of like forbidden.
It is forbidden, yes.
For
That's right.
reasons. Yeah, for certain reasons, kind of like what we see in society today. So I was just curious what you guys thought about that.
Well, me personally, I think that, if you're talking about Ancapistan or, the society without a state, that everything just boils down to what you're comfortable with contracting, right? So if you want to make an agreement with another person or an organization and, interest is against your religion or something, well, then you're not going to sign anything that has interest that has a component of your agreements. And that's totally fine.
Yeah, I think
let me just throw something in here just real quick because sometimes it can get there a little bit. But, for example, when it comes to contracts, if I can technically go ahead and sign up a contract to be a slave or something like that, but nobody really considers that like legally binding, So I'm just for that kind of thought process when it comes to this.
Yeah, so signing a contract to be a slave is basically like trying to sell your car while you're driving it. It doesn't work. Now, you can have a contract for indentured servitude, for I will serve you for this much time, and then it's over. Now, that is a reasonable thing to have in a free society. Now, honestly, the biggest difference is that since there will be a market on these things, you will actually find out what they are. So, you use money, but no one tells you about fractional reserve. No one tells you how it actually works. You use the banking system, but there's a very specific way. There is only one way that you can bank in the United States, and they don't tell you what it is. Whereas with a free market, if you want a halal bank, that's great. There will be people to serve you a halal bank that does not loan any money at any interest. They go, no usury at all here. And if you, on the other hand, are like, well, just like anything else, there needs to be a price on money and I'm okay with interest, well, then you can go to a different bank.
And wouldn't it be great to have those types of competitive organizations within the market instead of, this sort of one size fits all?
For sure, and I think it kind of exists like that in a global scale at least. America's they pretty much set interest rates the base level, but in other places they kind of do some interest free in like Islamic countries.
Sahid, before you go on, I'm curious about this because I think it's an interesting discussion. Well, interesting. I think it is a discussion worth having. How is it that someone can? I'm not necessarily against the idea of interest-free loans. I think if you can do it somehow and afford to do it and it works out, I think that's great. It's a great service to be able to provide people. But I'm guessing the reason why a lot of people charge interest on loans is because there's risk involved, and you have the potential for somebody to take a loan out and then never pay it back. And I guess if you are charging interest on loans, and that can kind of help cover some of those defaults that might be happening. That's just kind of my basic understanding of one of the rationales for it. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
So in Islam, there's like a distinction between the principal payment and the actual interest on top of that. And people can go ahead and be insolvent, or they can't really technically default on it. They owe that money. Pretty much, it's kind of like that's like the base state. You owe that money. That's their property. Technically, they loaned it to you. They never transferred the ownership to you. You know what I mean? So people can take that risk and make that loan, but usually they'll have a collateral on the side to kind of hold against just in case they go at default. But they still go ahead and still owe the principal amount.
So collateral's okay. You can't default on the loan. And then what if, is it possible, since we were talking about indentured servitude, can you sign a loan and be issued the funds for the loan, but back it with indentured servitude if you cannot pay it back? Is that a possibility under Islam?
I am not 100% sure, but I do know that the only thing that person, technically the only thing that person owed when they made that loan, and that person put the collateral of the indentured servitude on there, that person still just owed the value of what their principal was. So if they somehow were able to come up with it, or maybe somebody else goes ahead and loans it, gives it to them so they can go ahead and pay that person back, then that's totally fine. But obviously,
right. So you could then indenture yourself in theory. I don't know if indentured servitude is okay under Islam, but if it is, then you could indenture yourself to somebody else who then pays your loan off to the bank, and then they own you for a couple of years.
That's a strong word there. It's more like just like working off your debt for the most part. But at the end of the day, you're never forced to do anything that somebody else says. At least that's my own. Because you do own your body and your mind and whatnot, no matter what you write down on a piece of paper. But you do owe that person that money. You can't really run away. That would be theft.
Certainly.
And so you do have to. go ahead and pay that back. But that's actually an interesting point there when it comes to interest, because that principal payment is what they went ahead and gave you. But on top of that, they believe that they're owed something on top because you gave your word that you're going to go ahead and pay something on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
People do take their word very seriously when it comes to loans, but in other cases like online forms or pretty much so many things that we go ahead and sign our name to that we really don't care. We really don't have any plan of following through with it, But there's this idea of like what does the other party, what are they able to go ahead and do in response to that, And so that's kind of like the direction I was trying to take that question, because I do think it's interesting in Ancapistan how that works. Because, for example, I can, there's a lot of different contracts I can sign, but what's the response going to be on top of that,
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't pay that back.
I think it'd be interesting.
I'd love to find out.
Yeah, it would be great to be able to see what the market was offering for loans without having some Federal Reserve or banking cartel making all the decisions from the top.
Yeah, one of the things that I would look forward to in a free market banking system. So the way that loans get made now for cars and houses, you are putting the car that you don't own as collateral on a loan. Now, to me, that is insane. I would never bank with anyone doing that.
Right.
You put the house that is not your property as collateral for a loan in order to buy the house. Now, to me, that is just straight fraud. So I would love to see what the banks can do without doing that.
Yeah. Sahid, anything else you want to share?
Nah, not off the top of my head.
Hey, thanks for the call tonight. Salam alaikum.
Hey, well, I guess salam.
Appreciate it. I always like
peace be with
I
us
like
all.
to, that's what that means, right? So you can bring up whatever you want here. I'm not Islamic, but we used to have Imam on the show with us regularly, Will Coley, and so I learned a lot from him. I also read the Quran while I was in jail 10 years ago, a very long time ago, and so I learned a lot about it then as well. Did some studying, so I know a little bit more than the average talk show host about it. The number is 603-283-6160. You can bring up anything that's on your mind here. We're going to get into this terrorism story where they're trying to make it sound like people who believe in conspiracy theories, which has basically turned into facts recently, like all of the conspiracy theories post 2020, it seems like they've come true, at least with regards to COVID-19 related stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of memes about put another coin in the Alex Jones jar.
He's going to need them. We'll get into that one here in just a moment. The number is 603-283-6160. You can bring up anything you want here on Free Talk Live at 603-283-6160. We're here on Christmas Eve, and it's open phones, as it always is. And then coming up later tonight, Beard Talk Live at 10:30 Eastern Time. So you want to stay tuned for that on our video channel at video.freetalklive.com. More coming up.
A congressman recently revealed that legislation totaling 2,900 pages and involving more than $1 trillion was available to members of Congress for less than 48 hours to study and consider. That's over 60 pages of legislation per hour. Do you think anyone read the entire bill? I'm Jim Babka with DownsizeDC.org. Consider a proposal buried in a 3,200-page, $388 billion bill, which would have empowered committee chairmen or their agents to examine Americans' tax returns. When this horrible provision came to light, no one claimed to know how it got into the bill. One congressman questioned said, "I didn't write it, I didn't approve it, I wasn't even consulted." If your attorney represented you this way, he might be disbarred. But this is how Congress represents you every day. That's why DownsizeDC.org has created the Read the Bills Act. You can force Congress to read their bills before they pass them at DownsizeDC.org.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Gold and silver. You can own the most stable assets in recorded history with BullionMax.com. Buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals shipped fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live can get you their Silver Starter Kit at employee pricing. Just go to bullionmax.com/FTL. It includes 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products plus a free gold bag. This offer is limited to 1 per household, so get yours now. Go to bullionmax.com/FTL. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join us. You can bring up anything you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight it's Ian.
Beagless Mountaineer.
And some sort of conspiracy theorist terrorist.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do in New Zealand. We're going to get into that story. Plus, you can go to bitcoin.com if you're ready to start learning about.
Where is just Zealand?
That's a good question. The UK?
It's in, it's in Old England.
Kind of like New Hampshire is also, the Old Hampshire is from the UK.
Is it just called Hampshire?
I think so.
In the UK? Or is it called Old Hampshire?
I think it's just Hampshire.
Okay.
I think that's where they grow hemp,
as I
right?
recall, actually, come to think of it, I think Zealand was in Amsterdam. Was like another word for Amsterdam.
Okay.
So we got open phones here on Christmas Eve. The number 603-283-6160. And the phones are working well tonight. We had real data issues last night. Everything's all cleared up.
Technicalities.
Yeah, it's all cleared up here tonight. But again, open phones here at 603-283-6160. We'll talk about finding food in Cuba. It is not very easy.
Oh, sorry, correction, Denmark.
Why is that? We can get into it coming up. But Captain, you had this story to share coming out of New Zealand regarding conspiracy theorists being the latest target of the New Zealand government.
Well, we've heard something similar to this in the U.S. where, news, the government are trying to get people to consider folks with opposing government viewpoints to be considered terrorists, domestic
terrorists.
Right, yeah.
Even though they haven't actually bombed anyone or shot anyone or threatened.
Even though we're literally the biggest voice to stop bombing people, stop shooting people, stop putting innocent people in cages.
Yeah. So I read this and I thought, this is a preview of what's to come. sadly.
To the U.S.
Yeah, I feel the same about China with their
social
app.
credit systems.
The green and the red on the app that allows them or disallows them to travel. Oh, no, we're locking down. No, you can't go anywhere. Like, yeah, come on.
Well, the glorious People's Republic of New Zealand requires your compliance.
This is from a site called newspunch.com. It says, where mainstream fears to tread. I assume they're a righty site. I don't know much about them, but...
Probably.
New Zealand demands citizens report conspiracy theorists who oppose government policies as terrorists. The authoritarian left-wing New Zealand government has ordered citizens to report their friends and family to the police if they suspect them of opposing government policies, including COVID measures. According to literature released by Jacinda Ardern's WEF Infiltrated Government, New Zealand citizens who are suspected of being conspiracy theorists, quote unquote, will be investigated as terrorists.
Wow.
This government overreach coming to a government near you.
Yeah, they're just coming right out and saying it. That's amazing.
Rebecca Kitteridge, director of the New Zealand Security Intelligence Service, explained that there are dozens of indicators that suggest a family member or friend has been radicalized by conspiracy theories and could be planning a terror attack.
Well, I mean, do we really need more than one political view? Ever?
That's what it's come down to, right? Like, if you're outside of the government's official view...
I maintain we need zero.
I mean, should we really be talking about things instead of just shooting each other? You know, like civilized people.
The article goes on, anyone who opposes government policies that are interpreted as infringing on rights or COVID measures the government took.
Hold on. Any policy that is quote unquote interpreted as infringing on rights, meaning that whatever they do.
Anyone who opposes, quote, government policies that are interpreted as infringing on rights, unquote. That's one.
Right. So anyone that thinks that government is infringing upon their rights is a conspiracy theorist and
therefore a terrorist.
Wow.
Please report them.
If anyone who opposes COVID measures the government took, quote unquote, must be reported and investigated as terrorists, according to Kitteridge.
We know they're your family members and you care about them, but we need to make sure they get corrected before they turn into a violent terrorist. You wouldn't want your son or your daughter or your brother to end up in a terrorist camp where we execute them. So we need to take them to a re-education camp first where we can help them, like the Chinese are helping the Uyghurs.
We just need to concentrate them in one area where we can re-educate them.
Right. And they already have the camps. Remember, they've set those up during the quarantine. They had the quarantine facilities that they did down there in New Zealand, and they're still sitting there.
Well, I mean, these uppity peasants think they're allowed to form their own opinions on what the state does.
They'll show them.
They have a screenshot of a twit from Wall Street Silver. Says, New Zealand has gone full police state. Anyone with a different point of view is an enemy. New Zealand government booklets being released telling public that if they suspect their friends or family are opposing government policies, including COVID measures, they should be reported as terrorists.
So that post would be reported if New Zealand or Wall Street Bets or whatever was in New Zealand.
Yeah.
This show would certainly qualify. We question all kinds of things the government does.
They have what looks like a video of some news people, but I haven't seen the video.
Here they have to cook up a bunch of Bitcoin-related quote-unquote crimes and raid your house based on those, because they haven't gotten to the point of actually being able to call having a different opinion terrorism in the United States yet. But how far away are they?
Oh, not very.
Bitcoin. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it does, but you're not allowed to do it.
If you have Bitcoin, you must be a terrorist.
Yeah.
I mean, coming soon, right?
Well, yeah, they'll just say, look, it's pretty clear that Bitcoin was intended to undermine the U.S. financial system, and that's an act of terrorism.
Well, you're allowed to have your own opinions as long as they're not about what the government's doing. It's very simple.
The article continues, under Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's leadership, New Zealand has emerged as the vanguard of World Economic Forum's left-wing authoritarian agenda. Citizens have had their rights stripped from them in a systematic and ruthless fashion, and now they are being told that questioning government authoritarianism is a form of terrorism.
Wow.
There's simply no room in New Zealand for public debate. Anyone with a different point of view to Ardern's WEF-infiltrated government is considered an enemy.
Okay, so they're going to redefine the word terrorism next. Remember how in COVID times they were redefining words in like Merriam-Webster's dictionary, like vaccine, I believe was redefined in that time.
Yes, it was.
So now they can redefine terrorism to say anything the government doesn't like. That's the new terrorism, because the old terrorism was
forming an opinion about government.
It's the contrary opinion. You can have the opinion that government is good and that government is helpful.
No, not in New Zealand. You're not allowed to have that opinion.
Why not?
Well, because you might be against what they're doing.
No. If you're in favor of what they're doing,
you might think that they need to help people.
No. You believe they're helping people. This is clearly helping people. They're taking people and they're re-educating them about, what the truth is, and it's whatever they say it is. But the old definition of terrorism is, if you were to go look it up, I presume it's still there, that it is the use of violence or the threat of violence to achieve a political or social goal. That's what terrorism is.
But that's not an opinion, Ian. That's the truth.
For now it is.
Government can only be good. We have defined it as goodness itself.
Yeah, that's what
I am the science. I am the truth. I am all that is good in the world.
Oh, there's more to this.
Oh, I want to find out about it. We'll get into it coming up here in moments. The number is 603-283-6160. You can call in and criticize the government. Well, at least for now, you can. We'll let you. It's Free Talk Live. They haven't taken us all away yet.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. The World Health Organization says China's hospitals appear to be filling up as a latest surge of COVID-19 gathers pace. Beijing insists no one died of COVID on Wednesday, and patients in intensive care remain relatively low. The WHO, though, says it's very concerned about the situation after China moved away from its strict zero COVID stance. UK Health Secretary Steve Barclay reportedly wants to fast-track a pay rise for NHS workers to try and head off further strike action. Nurses and ambulance workers are among those who've taken industrial action over pay in recent days. On Friday, strikes by Border Force workers will begin. Travel editor of The Sun newspaper, Lisa Minot, says they could have a major impact.
Bosses are saying they could actually be forced to close airports. There's 7 million people due to travel over the festive period, and I think the second round of strike action between the 28th and the 31st could be the real pinch point, as a lot of people will be returning back to the UK from after a Christmas break, could actually see that there is going to be serious delays.
Japan's approving a new regulation allowing nuclear plants to operate even longer than the previous 60 years. Japan's government's pushing for continued use of older reactors in a bid to meet its carbon reduction goals for 2030. Nora Weineck reports from Tokyo.
This change could allow Japan to restart many of its aging nuclear power plants, which have been offline since the triple reactor meltdown at the Fukushima No. 1 power plant in 2011. The decision comes just a day before the government is set to decide on a new energy policy, which is expected to emphasize the usage of nuclear power plants. However, realizing this plan may still take some time, as legislation is needed to implement the change, and the opposition is expected to strongly oppose the move. The announcement comes just after a local appeal to stop operations at a 46-year-old reactor in central Japan was rejected by a district court. Japan's government aims to raise the share of energy provided by nuclear power plants from 6.9% to over 20 by 2030. Nora Weineck, Tokyo.
Football Australia has issued more bans over the violent pitch invasion during an A-League match played in Melbourne. 8 more fans have been banned from attending Football Australia sanctioned matches and registering as a football participant. Sean Bindley reports.
Those punished are aged between 18 and 28 years old, with the ban spanning 5 to 25 years for a variety of violations. Earlier this week, lifetime bans were handed to 2 men over the pitch invasion during the Melbourne derby between City and Victory. It's also been revealed 4 people on banned lists were prevented from entering the stadium to watch the match last Saturday night. Football Australia continues to work with Victoria Police to identify others involved. So far, 13 alleged offenders have been charged.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open here, and you can join us, bring up whatever you want. I did mention, but we didn't really get into it, Bitcoin.com is where you can go to learn about cryptocurrency, because regardless of the fact that, according to some polls, interest is down, that is to say that people are not as interested in purchasing cryptocurrency today as they were a year ago, it isn't going away. Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and a bunch of the other ones, Monero, these things are
that's
great
also
ideas.
like not the important interest to pay attention to, in my opinion. Like whether or not people are willing to invest in it. The attention that I think is important for people to pay attention to is how many people are developing it, how many people are working on or with or forming new organizations that do new and unique things with cryptocurrencies, and that is at an all-time high. There are more people doing development around cryptocurrency and the cryptoverse, exchanges.
And so some really exciting things are being created.
Very much so.
Retail ownership is also at an all-time high. So
that's good news.
Yeah, retail versus your Coinbases and your Krakens and all that sort of thing. Retail ownership of Bitcoin is at an all-time high.
Now, are they basing that based on the number of individual wallets that hold a certain amount of Bitcoin?
Yep, wallets that are not associated with any organization.
That's always good news. More adoption, slowly but surely over time. But go to Bitcoin.com because you do need to learn about this stuff. You don't want to just jump in and leave your coins on an exchange, not really know anything about the technology, because that's been the case for a lot of the people that have been quote-unquote investing in cryptocurrency. They heard the number go up. They wanted to get in on it. They quote-unquote got some from usually some exchange, then held on to it for them, and then, well, if it was FTX, went out of business. So some people learned the hard way, one of the most basic lessons, that had you actually taken the time to learn some of the basics first, maybe you could have avoided that damage. So go to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started right there at the top of the page, and get digging into the world of cryptocurrency of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. Those are the two you're primarily going to learn about. But if you get those ones down, it's pretty good introduction over at Bitcoin.com.
And the simple fact of the matter is that if you operate like a bank, you will go out of business. So banks all of the time loan way more money than they have. If
that's their job.
Right. If a crypto exchange sells you more crypto than it has, it will go out of business.
Indeed. Except with the banks, the government will back them up. And with crypto exchange, you're on your own. Right. In that case. So, Captain, you were just getting into the story here about New Zealand. They are telling people to turn in your friends, turn in your neighbors, turn in your family members if they're starting to say things that might be outside of the mainstream. If they're questioning the government's version of events, and you were just playing a clip during the break that we actually played, I don't know, some number of months ago on the show from Jacinda Ardern.
There's some more about it here in the article.
If they're questioning either the government's version of what exists or the government's response to it, either of those means that you need to dub your friends, families.
Right. If they say something like, oh, the government shouldn't do that because that infringes on our rights, they're saying that you should turn them in for being a terrorist.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. It's insane. And the Jacinda Ardern, who's their prime minister or whatever over there, this horrifying, ugly woman that looks like a skeleton, she
well, here, let me pick up where the article left off. Ardern signaled the government's shift into fascist mode in July, telling citizens that the government is, quote, your single source of truth, and unless you hear it from us, It is not truth.
That's true. She said that's exactly what she said, and there's audio of this.
Truly mind-blowing.
Yeah.
According to far-left Ardern, citizens must...
Is that like a crossing the Rubicon kind of moment? I mean, that's
Yes.
like insane.
Yes.
Yeah, that's...
If it did not come from us, it is not true.
Before we went to the break, you guys were like, we are, or I am the science. Well, she's saying we are the truth.
I thought I was kind of exaggerating.
No,
Nope.
That really happened.
You were hitting the nail on the head, whether you knew it or not.
That was 6 months ago that she said that.
According to far-left Ardern, citizens must dismiss anything else they hear unless it was issued by the government. Scary times in New Zealand, but are you surprised? We're talking about a far-left authoritarian state led by young global leader Jacinda Ardern, where citizens are being told to put their total trust in government, and people who dare think for themselves and seek alternative sources of information are smeared as conspiracy theorists and investigated as terrorists.
And just to fill in anyone that needs it, Young Global Leader refers to the World Economic Forum training program.
Yeah, she's part of that.
Has had an extraordinary reach. Has included, the leader of Canada, Elon Musk, Putin. I mean, just an unbelievable list of people have been trained by the World Economic Forum in their Young Global Leader program.
So, Captain, does this story at all talk about what happens to people after they get turned in?
Nope.
Because that's one of the scariest parts, right? Like, where do they get disappeared
we know
to?
they're all going to be put in one place.
Right.
We know
could be in the
that,
ground. Could be a death camp. Could be just a retraining camp where you'll just be taught new
Just
things.
a re-education camp.
Look, they're doing it so successfully with the Uyghurs in China, so they're just going to borrow that idea and then move it into New Zealand, right? And that's totally fine.
Well, I mean, obviously these people are insane. You can't question the government and be sane at the same time. Duh.
Yes,
so we just need to heal their minds, and we will know that they are healed when they can no longer question government.
This is a reason why in the United States it needs to end. The whole U.S. experiment needs to come to a close. The people who believe in conservatism need to move to conservative states. The liberals need to move to liberal states. And the libertarians need to move to New Hampshire. And then we all go our separate ways. That way, it's less likely that people will be throwing folks into indoctrination camps. Although they might do it anyway in some of those other states.
I mean, that seems to be the way governments are moving. If you disagree with government,
total authoritarianism.
Disagree with government, you're a terrorist. You are an other, O-T-H-E-R.
Yeah. Well, and this is exactly what I was yelling my head off about 20 years ago when they're like, oh, well, here's the USA Patriot Act. So I just have no rights if I get labeled a terrorist.
Bingo.
And I was yelling my head off then about they're gonna label us terrorists, not because we hurt anyone, not because we're threatening to hurt anyone, not because we ever want to hurt anyone, but because we are questioning them. We are undermining their ability to hurt people.
Yeah.
Well said.
Anything else in that story, Captain? If you want to join the show here,
other than it's ugly.
It's terrifying.
And it's probably a preview of all of our futures.
There has got to be something we can do to stop it. And I don't think I'm not talking about violence. I don't think violence is the answer.
We agree.
That's what they use. That's their tool in their tool.
That's the only tool they have and the only thing they use to get things done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember, they put an unbelievable amount of resources into brainwashing everyone. The reason they do that is because it matters what you think. It matters what you know. It matters what you believe.
They have to get you to buy into this. If the New Zealand people aren't turning in their neighbors, then this program doesn't work, right? If the New Zealand people don't turn in their friends and their family members, then they're not going to get anywhere with this. So if people don't buy into this propaganda, it stops right there. And the same thing was true with COVID. If people didn't obey the mask mandate, well, then all of a sudden they undid the mandate in certain places where it just didn't happen.
And let's not forget, they did have the snitch hotlines.
Sure.
In some states here in the U.S. as well as outside of the U.S. where, if somebody wasn't masking properly or following the lockdown protocols, you could call and snitch on them.
Yeah. Make no mistake, the authoritarian hellscape will either be brought in under thunderous applause or not at all.
Yeah. I was just watching, you talked about the Chinese social credit program. There was I don't know if it was the U.S. or it was some English publication that had a video about it, and they were talking with one lady in China whose job it is, under her credit score or whatever, she has to snitch on her neighbors, and she actually has a quota. She has to deliver information about her neighbors to the Chinese central authorities, and she is rewarded in some way for this.
Wow.
Yeah, and she has to do like 10 per week or something like that.
That is an angle on the central bank digital currency I hadn't even considered.
Snitching?
Yeah,
Wow.
snitching quotas.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to bring your credit rating back up. Better snitch on someone.
Right. Crazy. So, coming up here, how hard is it to get your hands on some food in Cuba? That's apparently getting pretty difficult. Let's talk about it coming up in moments. The number is 603-283-6160, and possible food subsidies coming to Greece as well. You can bring up anything here on Free Talk Live.
Do you ever say, I could care less, when you really mean the opposite? You mean to say, I couldn't care less. It's a common mistake. You are judged by how you speak, especially if you're looking for work, with so many more applicants than openings now. But even if you're not, avoiding common misstatements will help you make the most of the dozens of conversations and transactions that crowd your daily routine. So whatever you say, don't say whatever as a single word sentence. It's the most annoying expression in the American English language, according to a recent poll. And avoid cliches like the plague. Just kidding. But seriously, at the end of the day, you'll want to avoid this scenario, sounding like everyone else. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
Tricia, you deserve the forgiveness. Absolutely. I know that it feels like you've made some mistakes, and you know what? You have made mistakes. Now, it doesn't feel like this.
Who hasn't?
Right. A, it doesn't make any sense for you to continue to beat yourself up. You're not going to get anything out of it. Nobody else is going to get anything out of it.
That's
but
true.
B, you would give the forgiveness to somebody else. You deserve that forgiveness for yourself.
And only you can give it to yourself.
I mean,
and I think forgiveness is about moving on for yourself, being able to come to a position in your own mind where you're ready to just accept what went wrong and try your best to do better in the future. And find self-assess and find areas that you can improve. And I think, bringing forgiveness to the table for yourself is one of the most important things that you can do.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open on this live Christmas Eve. New Year's is next week. Christmas Eve.
If you decide to start your new year at Christmas, then why not? I mean, it's not like they know how time works.
I mean, it is kind of a throwaway week, right?
I mean, come on. They start a new day in the middle of the night so that half of the night is also morning. None of this makes any sense. Come on.
We're glad to be here with you, though, live here on whatever day this is, Christmas Eve. On Free Talk Live. The number 603-283-6160. We're going to go to your phone calls. Mitzi in Texas. You're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Gabley.
Hey, Mom. Nice.
We just wanted to wish you Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Oh, aww. And I got your presents just in time.
Oh, yay.
That's sweet.
I'm sad you're not wearing it tonight, though, I got to say.
All right, what is it? Now you got to tell us. Did you open it yet?
I haven't opened it yet.
Oh, okay, all right.
I don't open my Christmas gifts until Christmas. That's how I roll.
All right, well, you know you can wear it.
I know, right?
At the very least. You know that much.
Spoilers.
It is perfect for New Hampshire in the winter.
Oh, I believe it.
All right,
and we need it because it's like 11 degrees out here now.
Yeah, it's cold. Well, I mean, it can't be that warm in Texas yet, right? Isn't it like cold everywhere in the South right now?
11 degrees.
Right now in Texas.
Not this second, but yesterday morning it was.
Wow.
Because it was like 11 degrees on my way over here today.
Yeah, it's 13 right now, apparently. So, thank you guys for the kind wishes, and appreciate it. Was there anything else you wanted to share tonight?
No, that was it. Appreciate the job you guys do. Yep.
All right.
Happy holidays.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate
Merry
that.
Christmas. Love you guys.
Let's go to the phones here. Unscreened caller, you're on the air. All right, that's the third time, by the way. I took the guy off the air a couple of times. I just wanted to see if this guy was there at all.
Is it the same caller?
Yeah, same caller. Dude called in a couple times earlier in the show, and he was on hold for a little bit. So when I picked up the line, I thought, well, maybe he just, something happened to the line. So I figured I'd just answer immediately and see if he was there. And
no voice ever?
Something's wrong. Yeah, something's wrong with that guy's line. I don't know what's going on. But it's not us, because as you could hear, our lines are
maybe
working
he's
fine
got his
here
phone
tonight.
muted or something.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Sorry, bro. All right, so number 603-283-6160 in Havana right now. It is very difficult to get basic food items. Now, of course, in Cuba, it's kind of like a communist country, right? Like, yeah, there's been
I've been told.
There's been some changes over
but
recent.
Sarah keeps telling me that communism works.
She
It's
does.
good.
And now it's not total communism because they have had some changes in the last couple of decades ever since the Castro brothers have been gone from
total communism doesn't last very long.
Yeah. Belkis Fajardo, this is the AP reporting. Belkis Fajardo, age 69, walks through the dense street of downtown Havana with a small bag of lettuce and onions in hand.
Wait, I'm sorry. I don't mean to stop you, but I just had a thought. It occurs to me that communism could very well be sold to the United States as a weight loss program.
Have you considered the Venezuela diet?
No, I mean just like
You've heard of the Mediterranean diet.
There's
Maybe just don't have enough food to eat.
I'm a fat dude, so I'm included here. But like, there's so many obese people in the United States today, right? And that they call it an epidemic and all that kind of thing. And so it occurs to me that somebody could run on the platform of we will introduce communism as a weight loss program for America.
It would be successful.
For a very low fee, we will take all of your money and you will have nothing to buy food with.
Right.
She wonders how she'll feed her family over the holidays. This is a lady named Belkis. Scarcity and economic turmoil are nothing new to Cuba, but Ms. Fajardo is among many Cubans to note that this year is different thanks to soaring inflation. Guess they're having that problem too.
Oh, weird.
And deepening shortages. She says, we'll see what we can scrape together to cook for the end of the year. Everything's really expensive, so you buy things little by little as you can. And if you can't, you don't eat, she said. Basic goods such as chicken, beef, eggs, milk, flour, and toilet paper are difficult and often impossible to find in state-run stores. When they do appear, they often come at hefty prices, either from informal shops, resellers, or in expensive stores, only accessible to those with foreign currency. It's far out of the range of the average Cuban state salary, approximately 5,000 pesos a month, or about $29 US, on the island's more widely used informal exchange rate. So this is sounding a lot like the Venezuelan stories we were talking about over the last several years, where there's the official exchange rate, and then there's what they're calling the informal exchange rate. That's the black market, where you find out what the peso is actually valued at when you're not trading through the official channels, through the banks or whoever. Nearby, a pound of pork leg was selling for 450 pesos, around $2.60. So just think about that for a moment. You're earning 5,000 pesos a month, and 1 pound of pork leg is a full tenth of your monthly salary. Okay. Not everyone can buy things, she says. Not everyone has a family who sends remittances, which of course is wire transfers and like Western Unions from abroad. She says, with the money my daughter earns and my pension, we're trying to buy what we can, but it's extremely hard. In October, says the AP, the Cuban government reported that inflation had risen 40% over the past year and had a significant impact on the purchasing power for many on the island. Now remember, they say that hyperinflation is 50% or higher. Yep. And of course, we also know that governments lie about their inflation numbers. So if the Cuban government is admitting to 40% inflation,
what is it really?
Exactly. While Fajardo managed to buy vegetables, rice, and beans, she still has no meat for Christmas or New Year's. The shortages are among a number of factors stoking a broader discontent on the island, which gave rise to protests in recent years, as well as an emerging migratory flight from Cuba. On Friday, U.S. authorities reported stopping Cubans 34,600 plus times along the Mexican border in the month of November, which was up 21% from the 28,800 times in October. So there's a lot more people trying to get the F out of Cuba now. The dissatisfaction was made even more evident during their local elections last month, when 31.5% of eligible voters didn't even cast a ballot, a far cry from the nearly 100% turnout during Fidel Castro's lifetime. Despite being the highest voting abstention rate in the country that it had seen since the Cuban Revolution, the government still hailed it as a victory. However, in an address to Cuban lawmakers last week, President Miguel Díaz-Canel acknowledged the government's shortcomings in handling the country's complex mix of crises, particularly food shortages. Now, one thing we don't have a problem with here in the United States, at least not yet. Is food shortages. Right. There were some supply chain issues during COVID, and toilet paper was kind of difficult to find when it was insanely in high demand, and the market couldn't respond to that quick enough, it seemed.
And we've seen increase in prices of things that are very common. $5 eggs, for example.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, produce prices were up dramatically in just the month of November.
Beef is insane right now.
Yeah, so we are seeing increased prices, but you can still go and buy most of whatever it is you're looking for, whereas the Cuban people can't even buy meat. She says, let's see, Ricardo Torres, a Cuban and economics fellow at the American University in Washington, said he saw the words as meaningless, the words from the politician, without a real plan to address discontent. He says people want answers from their government, not words, answers. For years, the Caribbean nation has pushed much of the blame for its economic turmoil on the U.S.'s 6-decade trade embargo on Cuba, which has strangled much of the island's economy. However, many observers, including Torres, stress the government's mismanagement of the economy and reluctance to embrace the private sector are also to blame. And this is, once again, exactly what we saw with the Venezuelan situation, where the Venezuelan government was blaming the United States and blaming the U.S. Sanctions on Venezuela for the reason why their system was failing. Now, there's no doubt.
It's not our insane amount of corruption that's causing this. This is your fault.
I wish there weren't sanctions, because then they wouldn't be able to point to that. And that's a convenient scapegoat for these communist nations to say, oh, well, we'd be doing fine if we could just trade with the United States. And certainly, they'd probably be doing a little bit better if they could trade with the United States, if there was some semblance of free trade between them. So, but that said, it's obviously, communism that is the problem here. Communism has failed every single time it has been tried, and failed in a disastrous manner.
Yep.
Not just like some little failure that people just wanted to turn around, but like starvation and
I do
murder.
want to clarify, state-based communism. Right.
Well, that's the only type.
Communism is one of those slippery words where it could literally mean the anarchist utopia.
Well, so I make the distinction because, like, there are people who would like to go find buy a plot of land, invite some family and friends, homestead it away and act in a communal way, right? This could be called a commune, right? So I want to make a distinction between that and state-based communism, right? Which is the communist system of government.
There aren't very many successful communes, though, either.
No, but they do exist.
I've heard that.
Well, communism works real well in the size of a family.
Right.
There's more coming up here in moments. You can join us. Bring up whatever you want. Hour 3's on the way. Free Talk Live.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. The World Health Organization says China's hospitals appear to be filling up as a latest surge of COVID-19 gathers pace. Beijing insists no one died of COVID on Wednesday, and patients in intensive care remain relatively low. The WHO, though, says it's very concerned about the situation after China moved away from its strict zero COVID stance. UK Health Secretary Steve Barclay reportedly wants to fast-track a pay rise for NHS workers to try and head off further strike action. Nurses and ambulance workers are among those who've taken industrial action over pay in recent days. On Friday, strikes by Border Force workers will begin. Travel editor of The Sun newspaper, Lisa Minot, says they could have a major impact.
Bosses are saying they could actually be forced to close airports. There's 7 million people due to travel over the festive period, and I think the second round of strike action between the 28th and the 31st could be the real pinch point, as a lot of people will be returning back to the UK from after a Christmas break, could actually see that there is going to be serious delays.
Japan's approving a new regulation allowing nuclear plants to operate even longer than the previous 60 years. Japan's government's pushing for continued use of older reactors in a bid to meet its carbon reduction goals for 2030. Nora Weineck reports from Tokyo.
This change could allow Japan to restart many of its aging nuclear power plants, which have been offline since the triple reactor meltdown at the Fukushima No. 1 power plant in 2011. The decision comes just a day before the government is set to decide on a new energy policy, which is expected to emphasize the usage of nuclear power plants. However, realizing this plan may still take some time, as legislation is needed to implement the change, and the opposition is expected to strongly oppose the move. The announcement comes just after a local appeal to stop operations at a 46-year-old reactor in central Japan was rejected by a district court. Japan's government aims to raise the share of energy provided by nuclear power plants from 6.9% to over 20% by 2030. Nora Weinig, Tokyo.
Football Australia has issued more bans over the violent pitch invasion during an A-League match played in Melbourne. 8 more fans have been banned from attending Football Australia sanctioned matches and registering as a football participant. Sean Bindley reports.
Those punished are aged between 18 and 28 years old, with the ban spanning 5 to 25 years for a variety of violations. Earlier this week, lifetime bans were handed to 2 men over the pitch invasion during the Melbourne derby between City and Victory. It's also been revealed 4 people on banned lists were prevented from entering the stadium to watch the match last Saturday night. Football Australia continues to work with Victoria Police to identify others involved. So far, 13 alleged offenders have been charged.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, with more today on the German perspective of the situation in Ukraine after President Biden announced another $2 billion in military assistance for Kiev during President Volodymyr Zelensky's Wednesday visit to Washington. The German government is among those in Europe holding out the possibility of a negotiated settlement between Russia and Ukraine and argues that it's important to keep channels of communication open with Vladimir Putin, despite US claims that he's a war criminal.
We need to be patient. We need to give Ukraine the necessary time and make sure that the West stays united and supplies Ukraine with what is needed.
Miguel Berger is the German ambassador to Britain and says with Russia preparing for a spring offensive in Ukraine, the world may have to wait for negotiations to occur.
The Ukrainians know that this is going to come once the winter is over. And what we have to do is really to supply them with the maximum amount of support we can give to them. If at a certain stage it's necessary to sit down and talk with the Russians, yes, I have no doubt about it. But the crucial question is, has Putin understood that his imperialistic view, that he can occupy a country, that he will fail with that? And so far the Russians have not understood the lesson.
Only if they do, he says, can negotiations ever begin with Moscow. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap the top stories, the WHO says China's hospitals appear to be filling up as COVID-19 surges. The UK's Health Secretary reportedly wants to fast-track a pay rise for NHS workers to head off further strikes. Japan's approving new rules to allow nuclear plants to operate longer than the previous 60 years. And Football Australia has issued more bans over the violent pitch invasion during an A-League match. That's the latest feature story news. Ollie Barrett reporting.
Researchers were able to successfully teach a father how to communicate his emotions with rudimentary hand gestures. The stunning development happened after Stanford researchers spent 9 months trying to train 42-year-old Pittsburgh father Ron Myers to express simple sentiments like pride and love in a way few thought possible. To conduct the study, researchers used large, simplistic diagrams depicting hand gestures a dad might use to show emotion in a way Ron could easily comprehend.
We would often leave Band of Brothers or 30 for 30 reruns on to help him stay comfortable.
When Ron was able to successfully identify an emotion, he was given rewards to reinforce good behavior, including buffalo wings or a moment to read a page of a Tom Clancy novel. Despite Ron's breakthrough, researchers say he still has a way to go before achieving full emotional maturity, as after several months of work with Ron, he still retreats to the corner of the lab to look up drywalling techniques on the internet whenever his real family drops by to see him.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. We ended up talking about Chewbacca's genitals there during the break.
Butt fur.
Yeah, so you can bring up whatever you want here. The number 603-283-6160. It is, by the way, the Christmas Eve edition of Free Talk Live. With you tonight, it's Ian.
Pickles Mountaineer.
And a fat man with a beard who actually exists. And it's not Santa Claus.
What do you have a cloaca?
Wouldn't you like to know?
What's a cloaca?
Oh, it was so a cloaca is usually in terms of like birds and lizards, but they sort of package their genitals on the inside.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they use like one hole for the pooping and the reproducing.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Fun.
Cloaca.
Cloaca.
We'll just leave that one there.
I just like the sound of the word, not what it actually means. Cloaca.
Let's just leave that one there. All right. So we were talking about Cuba a moment ago, and there's just a little bit more to this story that I thought was worth sharing. It's a lot. It sounds very similar to what we've been hearing in Venezuela over most of the last decade, as the Venezuelan government was cranking up the inflation on the Venezuelan people. It drove a tremendous amount of people into poverty who had never been there before, destroyed the middle class in Cuba, made it so you couldn't even get like potable water in a lot of places.
Almost that kind of thing happen in Greece too, like back in the early 2000s?
Things were looking pretty bad for Greece. They had to put in austerity measures, I think.
Didn't they have like a lot of hyperinflation?
Yeah, I think they were dealing with that too. I don't know if it was in the early 2000s or like the 2010 kind of range.
I'm trying to remember if they had to resort to stealing people's bank accounts in a
They did,
bail-in scheme.
Yeah, a haircut, I think is what they called
it's
it.
a haircut.
Yeah, I think it was right around like maybe
Well, it's a good thing they didn't do that during the pandemic, because you can't get a haircut.
The 08, like the 08 banking crisis in the U.S., right? When the
what now?
The banks failed. I think that was right around the time Greece was having problems.
Could be. Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. I know we talked about it here on the show, but it has been a long time. But on Friday, so we're talking about the difficulties in Cuba just getting basic food items right now. And part of the reason is because, well, the government runs the grocery stores there, and they give an example. So this is the AP reporting here that on Friday, a long line of Cubans waited outside an empty state-run butchery, waiting for a coveted item, a leg of pork, to feed their families.
Okay, if it was empty, why would they wait?
On New Year's Eve. They're hoping.
Because they didn't know it was empty, would be my guess.
About a dozen people the Associated Press asked for an interview said they were scared to speak, including one who said, quote, "It could have consequences for us." Estrella.
I don't want to talk about the government.
Not in Cuba.
Right.
Estrella, 67, has shown up to the state butcher every morning for more than 2 weeks, waiting her turn to buy pork to share with her children, grandchildren, and siblings. So far, she's come up dry. 2 weeks.
At that point, I'd be like, there's got to be a better way to do this. I would figure out another method.
It's almost like being able to charge what you want to charge for a good or service sort of incentivizes people to find a way to get it done.
Well, and it turns out, and to be clear, the AP does say that pork is available from private butchers.
Right.
Huh.
Wouldn't you know?
Yeah. So the private butchers have the pork, but the state-run ones don't. Now, of course, you have to pay more at the private butchers, but it's available.
Right.
Whereas state-run facilities are subsidizing the pork prices. So what happens when you force prices to be lower than what the market would otherwise bear? It all gets sold out.
Well, and this also speaks to government brainwashing, right? It doesn't happen just here in the United States. It happens in all governments. That's what they do. They brainwash you from the time you're born until you die. The brainwashing is a forever thing that governments do. And so these people have this mommy-daddy syndrome attached to the government. And, they believe, right? This lady strikes me as the type of person who believes that the government will provide for her.
Yeah, just if she keeps coming every single day for months, she might get a pork leg.
Yeah, instead of figuring out a different way.
Right. I mean, obviously her time isn't worth much, right? Because, okay, whatever
Almost
the price
like it's hard to earn extra money in this communist state.
That's a good point as well, where a lot of the jobs are state jobs, essentially. So that's another good point. But otherwise, if your time is worth even a little bit, and you've spent 2 weeks every single morning waiting in a fruitless line to get some pork, well,
in America, they don't even have lines for free pork.
What does the private pork at the private store cost? Because couldn't you make a little bit of money in 2 weeks worth of work that you could then just go to the private store and get the pork that you need?
Right. The time you spent waiting in line, you could have spent doing something to earn your way into the pork that you're missing out on.
How much more expensive could it possibly be? By the way, she said she's still waiting, hopeful that she'll be able to cook Cuba's traditional holiday dish, saying, quote, if we're lucky, we'll be able to buy it today. If we're not, we'll come back tomorrow. Because obviously this woman literally has nothing better to do with her time than stand in a line in Cuba waiting to get into a state-run store to buy something. Which, by the way, in Venezuela, they also had people waiting in lines for like some of the most basic items at the state-run grocers there.
Well, maybe she's just a patriot who believes in the glorious People's Revolution.
Right. And there's a lot of people still that are like that in Cuba. They were the ones who were cheering when the people who were protesting the state earlier, was it this year or last year? It was like during the summertime, either this or last year. And then, of course, the state came in and cracked heads and did as much damage to the protesters as they possibly could.
So, honest question, has the world learned anything from the fall of the USSR? Like
Apparently
anything
not.
At all?
I mean, the
With
Russian
last
people
time
might
that
have.
We almost murdered everyone on the planet with nuclear weapons, and then everyone starved to death, and then there was a country that wasn't a country anymore.
Near as I can tell, the only thing that the world learned from the fall of the USSR is that it's okay for denim jeans to be sold everywhere.
Oh, well, there's that.
By the way, I looked up.
Thank you, Captain. Little ray of sunshine
Just,
there.
Levi's.
It's my silver lining.
One of the details they left out of this story that made me curious, because they did give us what they said was the state salary in Cuba. The average state salary is approximately 5,000 pesos per month. And then they said that that's worth $29 at the, quote, island's more widely used informal exchange rate. That's the black market. So it made me wonder, what's the official exchange rate?
Yeah.
What would 5,000 pesos get you on the official exchange rate if you could go and exchange it? And remember, in places like this, I'm just going to presume that Cuba's the same way as Venezuela was, because that's just how these systems work. You can't take the peso into the bank and get dollars for it.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
No.
They will let you take dollars into the bank and get pesos for it.
course.
You
Wow.
can do that. So if you were to take, according to xe.com, which has a bunch of numbers and types of dollars and stuff that you can convert, if you took let's round up, $210 into a Cuban bank and said, give me pesos, please, they would give you 5,000 pesos. Whereas on the black market, it would only be $29 to get 5,000 pesos.
Wow.
So it's almost a 10-factor of difference between the black market and the official exchange rate there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So these people are living on, was that a monthly salary?
They're living on $30 a month in the black market prices.
Jesus.
Yeah. And they can't even buy food because the inflation is going crazy there. It's hyperinflation. It's basically hyperinflation levels if you don't believe the government 40% price or the 40% numbers. We're going to go to your calls and thoughts, whether you want to weigh in on communism or whatever's going on in your neck of the woods.
Well, and hold on to your hats on this one, because this is headed to the rest of the world.
Communism?
Well, the
inflation.
Shortages?
The food shortages that are caused by communism are headed to the rest of the world now.
Well, the whole rest of the world is playing the inflation game. That's for sure. All these central banks are printing money. Like it's going to end soon, and maybe they will. Maybe these governments will end soon. That would be nice.
It's mathematically impossible to avoid a crash.
Indeed. They can kick it down the road.
Yep.
And they have their tactics for that.
They keep doing it.
There's more coming up here. The number is 603-283-6160. We're here live on this Christmas Eve edition of Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, the Christmas Eve edition of the show. The phones are open if you want to join us here.
Ho, ho, ho.
You may. The number is 603-283-6160. It's
Who you
Ian.
calling a hoe?
Ian here with you.
Pickles Mountaineer.
And the captain.
And don't forget, you can join us online. Just head over to freetalklive.com. We have our AMPS program, and I want to say thank you to MRT, or maybe it's Mr. T?
Mr. T!
There's no space. It's just MRT, so
Bert.
I mean, I don't want to...
Pronounced Bert.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you,
Bert.
whoever you are. Thank you for supporting the AMPS program. It makes a big difference
He
for us.
pities the fool who doesn't amplify.
It's $5 a month, and you know how many kids today don't know who Mr. T is?
Oh, all of them,
Yeah,
right?
probably.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. T's got to be what?
He's
in
got to
his-
be in his 80s or something.
I would
right?
think, man.
We'll have to check that now.
I wonder if he still has the mohawk, or if he like went bald and couldn't, you know. Like, do you think he could have
What?
like?
He's only 70.
Oh,
I'm surprised. I figured he'd be older than that.
Wow, me too.
Yeah.
He pities the fool who thinks he's older than that.
He's a little younger than my
Makes me
parents.
wonder if like all of the A-Team is on YouTube, but no one watches it.
The A-Team and the Star Wars stormtroopers have something in common, and that is they waste incredible amounts of ammunition and hit very little.
Hit nothing yet.
But it's so much fun watching them shoot.
So thank you, Mert or Mr. T, for supporting the show.
Wouldn't
Really
it be funny if
appreciate
that was actually Mr. T amplifying this show?
That would be
That'd
awesome.
be amazing.
That would be sweet.
And you should call in, please.
Yeah. But anyway, thank you. You can go to amps.freetalklive.com. If you would like to join Mr. T or Mert for supporting the show, you can do it for $5 a month, which is what Mert is doing. So thank you, MRT. Definitely appreciate your support. And if you like what we're doing, that's the easiest way for you to get behind what we do and you get some perks like access to the AMP-only podcast, where you get the full radio show without the commercial breaks in there. So let's go to your phone calls and thoughts. Greg is in New York. You're on Free Talk Live. Hello, Greg.
Pity the fool. Okay.
Yes.
Hey, guys.
Appreciate it.
You know, just really quickly, I just wanted to say about the last topic. I find it interesting that it's similar to the people who are waiting for the VA, Veterans Affairs government-run hospital. And there have been people who died waiting for a surgery.
Yep.
And so, but my question is this. They died waiting for a surgery when private hospitals were willing to charge payment and treat them. So these people probably can't afford, the private market prices in the first place.
Sure.
So what are they to do? You know what I mean?
Black market pig growing. That would be my solution.
Well, they could overthrow the government somehow. I mean, that's the source of all their problems.
The thing about human beings is that when it's necessary, they innovate, right? Human motivation, what's the adage I'm thinking of, the old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Right.
But that's only if you're free to innovate. As long as there's not some government goon going to come by and stick a gun to your head and stop you from doing it.
Even under the duress of tyrannical governments, human beings have found ways.
Sure. Well, I mean, they're talking about some of the meats available in black markets or private markets.
Yeah.
So they
if we
out
look
there.
at just the United States, we look at the Prohibition era, right? And the guys who ran booze, right? The booze runners, right? They found a way. Right, they built stills up in the mountains.
Sure,
right,
at high risk.
At very high risk, of course, but they found a way.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Greg?
I believe in communities taking care of their own, but voluntarily. So that's why I'm trying to build it into the Intercoin system and others, basically having on a local level, because we can't get the federal government to change, but we can get our local communities to help the poor and maybe pay for their surgery or pay for their meat. Or whatever it is. But I think, there has to be a way for people to do that. I wanted to just call in about the verdict. I've been reading about it in the Keene Sentinel and everything like that. I found one thing to be really strange. That the whole thing sort of seems to be around anonymity and hey, these people showed up with cash and they want Bitcoin. And the Keene Sentinel was saying but these people could have been scammers who took money from, ladies on dating sites or whatever. And what I find strange is, how did they end up with cash at the end of the day? Cash is already anonymous.
Right.
I can already go and use cash. So I don't even understand, cash is already anonymous. Changing it for Bitcoin is also anonymous. And to me, that is a big issue because in society, it seems that the government is almost against privacy because,
of course they are.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, during the trial, the prosecution made it very clear to the jury that anyone that has cash is a suspect. That anyone that has cash, you should always want to know why. You should always ask them questions about what are they doing? How did you get all that cash?
If I have a used car to sell and I put an ad on Craigslist and, Bob Smith shows up and has, the right amount of money and I go, sure, here you go. I sign the title
you can't
over.
do that, Captain. That's money laundering. That's a conspiracy to money launder right there, Captain. Even though you didn't agree or hear anything about an illegal source of those funds, you're going to need to start asking asking your car buyers where they got their money from. Where did every single dollar come from? I'm going to need to see the receipt, sir, before I can sell you this car.
I'm not going to do that in that transaction.
Whereas if it's on your credit card, that is certainly on the up and up.
Yeah, or the CBDC.
All right.
Yeah, then you can just take the payment, no questions asked.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck out to me about this whole thing, like the money transmission idea, well, even in theory, you are one half of a money transmission. Like, even by their insane way of looking at things, where's the other half? Because, like, okay, you turned money into Bitcoin and then it got moved. Well, where's the other half? Oh, we don't want to bring Kraken in. We don't want to bring Coinbase in. We don't want to bring in all of the controlled exchanges for their part in this supposed unlicensed money transmitting business.
The government's position in this case is that it's impossible for anybody besides government to be able to prevent people from getting scammed.
It's absurd.
Which is totally absurd. And also, they didn't consider for a minute the fact that Ian himself was scammed.
Didn't care.
They didn't even care about that.
Greg, anything else?
The government even has this thing with what is it called when they take money that was involved in a crime? They just show up and take it. Like, oh, you have some cash.
Civil asset forfeiture. I'm going to accuse your property of committing a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Funny, property's real bad at defending itself in court.
It's a fact. Greg, anything else you want to share?
I just wanted to ask, how does the appeal process work in general, like in the justice system? Like,
well, I'm going to learn a lot more about it here in the coming months, so I'm sure I'll be able to answer that question with greater detail.
Stay tuned.
But as my understanding is, at least with the federal courts, your appeal has to go up to the First Circuit, or in our case, it's the First Circuit, whatever circuit you are living in. I think New York's a different circuit than the First, but it's the First Circuit Court of Appeals, which is based in Boston, and you can only appeal a case on questions of law. So you don't get to try the case again in front of a panel of judges or whatever. It's the question, the issue is, did you object during the trial? If you did object during the trial, then you can appeal on those things on which you objected. So that's really the only way you can do what they call preserve things, preserve questions, legal questions for appeal, and that's all you get to do, is you get to appeal the law and the decisions that the lower court made, essentially, on those laws. Thank you, Greg, for the call tonight. There's more coming up here in moments. This is Free Talk Live. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. The World Health Organization says China's hospitals appear to be filling up as a latest surge of COVID-19 gathers pace. Beijing insists no one died of COVID on Wednesday, and patients in intensive care remain relatively low. The WHO, though, says it's very concerned about the situation after China moved away from its strict zero COVID stance. UK Health Secretary Steve Barclay reportedly wants to fast-track a pay rise for NHS workers to try and head off further strike action. Nurses and ambulance workers are among those who've taken industrial action over pay in recent days. On Friday, strikes by Border Force workers will begin. Travel editor of The Sun newspaper, Lisa Minot, says they could have a major impact.
Bosses are saying they could actually be forced to close airports. There's 7 million people due to travel over the festive period, and I think the second round of strike action between the 28th and the 31st could be the real pinch point, as a lot of people will be returning back to the UK from after a Christmas break, could actually see that there is going to be serious delays.
Japan's approving a new regulation allowing nuclear plants to operate even longer than the previous 60 years. Japan's government's pushing for continued use of older reactors in a bid to meet its carbon reduction goals for 2030. Nora Weineck reports from Tokyo.
This change could allow Japan to restart many of its aging nuclear power plants, which have been offline since the triple reactor meltdown at the Fukushima No. 1 power plant in 2011. The decision comes just a day before the government is set to decide on a new energy policy, which is expected to emphasize the usage of nuclear power plants. However, realizing this plan may still take some time, as legislation is needed to implement the change, and the opposition is expected to strongly oppose the move. The announcement comes just after a local appeal to stop operations at a 46-year-old reactor in central Japan was rejected by a district court. Japan's government aims to raise the share of energy provided by nuclear power plants from 6.9% to over 20 by 2030. Nora Weineck, Tokyo.
Football Australia has issued more bans over the violent pitch invasion during an A-League match played in Melbourne. 8 more fans have been banned from attending Football Australia sanctioned matches and registering as a football participant. Sean Bindley reports.
Those punished are aged between 18 and 28 years old, with the ban spanning 5 to 25 years for a variety of violations. Earlier this week, lifetime bans were handed to 2 men over the pitch invasion during the Melbourne derby between City and Victory. It's also been revealed 4 people on banned lists were prevented from entering the stadium to watch the match last Saturday night. Football Australia continues to work with Victoria Police to identify others involved. So far, 13 alleged offenders have been charged.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. You can join the show here live, Saturday show, also our Christmas Eve edition. We are here live Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, and New Year's Day. Throughout the holidays, we're with you. We're here with you tonight. It's Ian,
Beakless Mountaineer,
and the Reverend Captain Kickass.
And the phones are always open at 603-283-6160. We're going to continue with your calls and thoughts. Padraig is on the line in New Mexico. Padraig, you're on Free Talk Live.
Okay, I'm going to make this real quick. You're talking about Cuba, the country, and I live in Cuba, New Mexico. Cuba, the country, is communist. Cuba, New Mexico is socialist. If you're working for government handouts, Cuba, New Mexico would be a ghost town.
Huh.
That's
okay.
The first point. Second point is, I heard a story in World War I where they were engaged in trench warfare, where they were just buried down and bogged down, and they had no man's land there. And Christmas Day came, and both the German soldiers and the European soldiers called a ceasefire. And
yeah,
they just went out there and
against all of their commanding officers. Every commanding officer said, "No, this is still a war. You still have to kill that guy." But they all defied orders and said, "No, this is Christmas."
Wouldn't it be nice if people around the globe would do that? Be like, "No, I'm not going to bomb people for you anymore."
Here's another point. Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky both have cell phones, because I'm talking to you on a cell phone now. How come they just can't? It's daylight on the other side of the world. Why can't they just call just a day of ceasefire, just to relax and enjoy Christmas?
Yeah,
because they're warmongering tyrants.
Well, and why couldn't the German soldiers and the European soldiers back then just call it off entirely? I mean, if they could do it for one day, why couldn't they just all go home the next day? Like, oh, you know what? Why are we doing this? This is crazy. We're all humans here. Let's go home to our families, and then just leave the commanders on the battlefield to fight it out.
Right. Yeah, and I'll tell you the reason that they will not take 1 second's rest. Because this is a cash cow. Every second that they spend trying to murder each other is another $1 billion that they can put in a new spending bill.
But who's paying those taxes?
Well, you are
getting their money from someplace.
You are.
My property taxes have gone up.
Well, and that's one of the things where, like, we don't tend to think about it, but every dollar that gets spent gets paid by everyone on Earth because it's the world reserve currency. So they are hurting everyone by spending this.
If we just quit paying our taxes, they wouldn't have no money.
Yep.
No, they just print it out. See, you got to do more than just quit paying taxes. You have to stop using their money. You have to choose an alternative, whether it's cryptocurrency or gold backs or some other form of alternative that is not backed by the dollar. Right. That's the key.
I prefer rye stones.
You don't have to leave physically. You do have to exit their system as much as you possibly can. Padraig, thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate it. Man. As we continue here, David is also in New Mexico. By the way, town of Cuba, New Mexico is like population 700 something. Tiny place. David, go ahead.
Yeah, Cuba. Shout out to the Mescalero Apaches. And speaking of that, you were speaking Navajo just a little bit earlier when you said a gooder service. It's like since you're actually appearing on Saturday night, one night or 2 nights a week, you're on in Farmington, New Mexico, Four Corners, Navajo Nation. Shout out to them. They are laughing now, Indian humor, because you said a gooder service.
I don't get it.
A good or that's because you're not Indian.
A good or service. A gooder service.
Gooder service.
I got you.
The Indians will say, instead of saying a better service, they will say it's a gooder service.
Okay, now I get you. Okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty gooder joke.
So you like that, do you? So you like that when you said ho ho ho, you were shouting out to my 3 X's, eh? You like that one too?
He's on a roll here, people.
That joke
or
is
possibly your mom.
That joke is it's kind of like how you want to make cookies with batter. It's a batter joke.
Damn.
Batter.
You're welcome.
Speaking of ho ho ho, let me defy a court order since it's Christmas Eve. My Christmas present to humanity, or at least to people in I guess it's to humanity, is I want to re-up Judge John J. Romero Jr. I want to violate your existing court order of no contact between myself and my children, one of whom is now technically an adult, but still under the jurisdiction of the court.
Really?
His name is
How can you be under a court order of no contact with your children when they're no longer a quote unquote legal child?
Well, remember that. Because for instance, child support doesn't end at 18. It can extend through 21 or through.
Oh, that's right. No, I am aware of that.
I had no idea.
Yeah, that came about right around the time that I remember this in Washington State. If you cohabitate with somebody that has kids that aren't yours, and you're a dude, if you cohabitate with them for, I think it's more than a year, it might be 2 years, and then you break up. You've never been married or anything like that. You can be sued for child support for children that aren't even yours.
Wow.
And I think that the 21 bit with child support came about right around the same time.
David, what was the other thing you said? You said they can go through 21, or what was the third thing?
In some cases, when in the case of dissolution of marriage or dissolution of relationship with children, it can be court ordered that for instance, typically speaking, that the male, the father, will be required to pay child support through the college education of said children. I have seen that. I don't know which.
Is that New Mexico specific, or is that federal? Do you know?
It would go state by state, I believe. In that case, it would depend, like I said, the jurisdiction you're in. But I wanted to violate this court order again in my assessment of the law. And once again, you're on the air in northern New Mexico, and you're also on the air in southern New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And there are people in government that this can get to them, even though it's Christmas Eve. So
we know the FBI is listening.
Oh, yeah.
Well, unfortunately, the FBI doesn't have any jurisdiction in this, but they're welcome to jump in. They can call Judge John J. Romero and tell him that David Brent Olson is willfully violating his court order of no contact and saying Merry Christmas to his son David, who theoretically should have the last name Olson. However, it might have been unlawfully changed to Elich, E-L-I-C-H, and to my other child, David's younger sister, Paisley, who still is a child, who has not yet reached the age of 18. Merry Christmas, Paisley. And that is in direct knowing non-compliance with the court order of John J. Romero Jr., I would love you to throw me in jail for 180 days for that Judge John J.
Now,
Romero
that is a
Jr.
kind of Christmas wish that I like to hear, somebody violating a court order by wishing somebody Merry Christmas. Thank you for the call tonight. Good luck, David. The number here is 603-283-6160. What a terrible story. What a sad
But that's a
situation.
hell of a gift.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, to be able to say that, you mean?
Well, to be able to facilitate somebody saying Merry Christmas to his son. Right. That I feel like we've done something good here now.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I'm amazed that you can still be considered a child at 21.
That's nuts.
But I mean, I shouldn't be so surprised because it's always this totalitarian tiptoe.
Well, and remember, family court is the worst court. Like family court, like as much as regular ass courts, whether it's federal or state or whatever, kind of follow their rules. Maybe they don't, but like they kind of do. Family court doesn't, more so than any other version of court.
Yeah, so many nightmare stories over the years.
And I mean, the goal of this all, from their perspective, is to make people perpetual children.
Yes.
So that you never are considered an adult. You never grow up.
You always need to be
never
taken care of.
responsible for your own actions.
Mm-hmm. That's what they want. They want a bunch of adult children, which there's a new term for, kidults. I don't know if you've heard that one yet.
I did, and I was like, oh my God, another new vocabulary word.
I refuse it.
It's terrible. Yeah, there's more on the way here, and you can join us. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We have time for you if you want to get on with us here on this live Christmas Eve edition of Free Talk Live. We'll get into what's happening in Greece with a new subsidy on food there. We'll talk about it.
As if Amazon Prime wasn't worth it just for the free shipping and hundreds of movies, thousands of TV shows, and millions of songs on Alexa, I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Browse Amazon Warehouse for deeply discounted open box deals on computers, TVs, unlocked phones, lots of returned merchandise, and Amazon Renewed sells refurbished merch. In both cases, like new, and guaranteed replacement or refund for 90 days if your purchase doesn't work as expected. I could not tell that several refurbished items I've bought weren't new. Manufacturers like Apple and Samsung also sell refurbs on their own websites. Most come with a new battery, and they carry a 1-year warranty, so they're new to you. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power. But there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. Forkfest.party.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join us even in these remaining moments. We have enough time for you. If you call in now at 603-283-6160, that's 603-283-6160. We've been covering a little bit of international news tonight with the food situation there in Cuba. Not looking so good. People waiting in long lines for days, coming back day after day after day, just trying to get basic food items from the state-run stores. And, of course, that's the problem, is the state runs the grocery distribution business there. But there's also problems in Greece right now as well. We'll get into that coming up here. It's Ian Peebles, Mountaineer, and Captain Kickass in the studio.
Present.
The number is 603-283-6160. And don't forget, you can join us online anytime at freetalklive.com. You can follow our podcast feeds. Just go to feeds.freetalklive.com. You'll find different options for subscribing there. Our main podcast and a few other ways to listen over at feeds.freetalklive.com. Coming up in about 40 minutes from now, 10:30 Eastern Time, you will be able to join Beard Talk Live. It's Captain and Peakless, and also usually nobody comes to the party as well. You guys will be taking us into Christmas Day all the way. Usually go to about 1 a.m. Eastern, I think, typically.
1:30.
Yeah, about 1:30. So tune in to
Uncensored.
Them. That's
no
right.
FCC.
No FCC to get in the way of you expressing yourself, and no pesky commercial breaks either. So head on over to video.freetalklive.com. Subscribe to our Odyssey channel there. We actually had a couple callers calling from Odyssey tonight, so thank you to our Odyssey viewers. And then you can watch it live at watch.freetalklive.com. If you don't have time to tune in live, just make sure you're subscribed to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, and the full audio version of Beard Talk Live will become available probably sometime later Sunday morning. So be sure you check that out. Meanwhile, let's go to the phones here. You're on the air on Free Talk Live. Who is this?
This is David calling from Kansas.
David in Kansas, what's on your mind tonight?
Well, I got my phone fixed, so I figured I'd call back this week because I owe you all an apology because I was backing Kanye West several weeks ago until he started to talk about all the good things Hitler did.
Okay.
Wow.
So I would like to state for the record that I backed his 2016 run because he announced it after it was impossible for him to run that year.
Okay.
Whereas now, not so much.
Yeah, I was actually on Kanye's side there for a few weeks until he decided to say, well, like Hitler was a good guy. Just look at everything that he did. That was good.
Yeah, he's definitely, if he hadn't lost his mind before, he has certainly lost it now.
Yeah, because, I take what I see from the media like a grain of salt, because,
Sure.
I mean, you look at what they did to Dave Chappelle.
Right.
And
well, yeah,
so
you can't trust the media reports, but in this case, you can actually hear Kanye say things like what you're referring to live on the Alex Jones show, and Alex Jones didn't know what to do about it. Like he made Alex Jones look like a sane man.
Yes.
Oh yeah, when all of a sudden Alex Jones looks like he wants to get in the bathtub with a toaster.
That's a great way to describe it.
Holy cow!
Yeah, it was pretty amazing watching that.
So I wanted to get that out of the way.
Okay.
And then I also just want to throw this out there. You're talking about inflation and food and issues, in Cuba and Greece, and Americans are only 3 meals away from violence.
Hmm.
And people need to remember that. You're 3 meals away from violence. That's the way humans operate.
I mean, we saw
Think
people
about-
fighting over toilet paper 2 years ago during the COVID
Exactly.
thing, right?
Yep.
Exactly. And that was just toilet paper, which absolutely had nothing to do with COVID.
Mhm.
Absolutely nothing to do with COVID. So, people need to realize that when it comes to currency has a very broad meaning. Skills can also be currency.
Yep.
Learn how to defend yourself, learn how to think critically, and learn a set of skills.
Well, and knowledge can be currency as well.
Hmm.
And if you have the right
Exactly.
knowledge, you can turn that into a career.
And we are that kind of an unlicensed transmitter.
Exactly.
Knowledge
Even when you
transmitter.
have the-
Knowledge.
even when you have the fall of society and you've got the breakdown of transportation, how are you going to get food? How are you going to get supplies?
Well, so
How are you going to get medicine?
when there's an absence of government, society is what will get us out of it. Right. Most people, listeners I'm talking to here, don't realize that government and society are two different things. Right. They think that
right.
government is society and that society is government, when in fact they're two separate entities. And in the absence of government, society still exists.
It'll flourish in that case.
That's right. And the problem is that how dangerous does it get until society realizes that we don't need government? Because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be very upset thinking that we don't have government, when in truth, the government is what's pushing us to the breaking point, because they haven't woken up yet.
Yeah, it's going to take
They haven't taken the red pill.
No, it's going to take a lot. Something's got to have to happen that's going to wake people up, because I mean, it wasn't COVID. People fell right in line and they did everything they were told. The jury in my case believed everything they were told by the government, even here in the so-called live free or die state.
Yeah, it's
expected
it's
more.
pretty sad, but we do for the first time have something. We have gold backs. We have gold and silver, the tried and true tested things. We have ammunition, right, which is sort of also a currency. But cryptocurrency exists, and it's the first time that we have a non-government method for exchanging value, one that they cannot
over a distance.
stop. Yeah, one that they cannot stop, mind you. That they've tried. Yeah. They're continuing to try every day to shut this thing down.
They tried,
and it still exists.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like we have a choice. We can put these things into place while the sun is shining. Like while the power's on, while the grocery stores still have food in them, we can change our ways.
What about FTX, David?
Well, the failure of FTX, to me, from the outside looking in, is the government trying to shut down cryptocurrency. Don't you think it's very interesting that he waived his extradition to come back to the United States so easily? Because he has names. He's going to name names, and he's going to end up he's going to get Epsteined. That's what I'm afraid of.
Well, he's already getting the in the club treatment from having donated to the tunes of billions of dollars, perhaps.
Yeah, billions. Exactly. He's up in the George Soros territory. Not quite as prolific,
to
but
government,
he's number
to
two.
The Democrat Party.
He's number two to George Soros.
I guarantee he's going to get off scot-free. He's going to get off scot-free, and he's going to get taken care of as long as he keeps his mouth shut.
I could see this one going either way, honestly. Like, I think that the most likely things are either A, he's going to be like, see, I am a reformed man, and I will now lead the charge in regulating cryptocurrency.
Well, he was already doing that.
Right. But now he just gets all this extra backing, and now it'll be court ordered that he does that.
Maybe he did.
Or this will be a very loud public punishment beating for questioning their power.
Thank you, David, for the call tonight, man, and Merry Christmas to you. Appreciate hearing from you, dude. Thanks.
All that good stuff. Happy Hanukkah if you're Jewish. Happy Ramadan if you're Muslim. And if you're atheist,
later.
Well,
Festivus for the rest of us.
Friendship.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for the call. By the way, update on Bankman since he brought it up here from CoinDesk. We heard about the $250 million bond. The feds were bragging that it was the largest ever in the history of federal cases, $250 million.
Inflation.
But was it really? According to CoinDesk, it turns out there is less than meets the eye in the $250 million bond. In fact, a lot less. In a typical federal case, the bondsman would charge 10 to 15% of the amount in cash to issue a surety bond or a bail bond. But in this case, that would be 37-something million. However, Bankman did not pay that for his bond. In fact, they paid zero cash for the $250 million bond. And there is a second way to acquire the bail bond, which is to pledge collateral in the full amount of the bond. So that would mean that if the defendant failed to appear, then the collateral would then be forfeited. The ownership would go to the court.
Yeah.
In his case, that would mean he'd need a benefactor to step up and pledge property worth $250 million. But that didn't happen either. Instead, his parents pledged their Palo Alto, California home, where he's staying under house arrest, which is worth, rumored, around $4 million. And that is the full extent of the collateral pledge to guarantee the $250 million bond.
Seems about $246 million shy.
So where did the $250 come from? Well, in this case, he wasn't required to post a conventional bond because he was given personal recognizance, which means that, oh yeah, we know you. We think you're going to show up, and you can just put your parents' house down.
Stealing $10 billion doesn't make you a flight risk? Come on.
So the personal recognizance bonds contains the solemn promise through his parents to pay the court $250 million if he fails to show up for trial at the appointed time. So he basically walked out by signing a piece of paper, and his parents put up their house. That wasn't $250 million. Nobody cut a check to the courts for that amount. Meanwhile, they kept me in jail for 69 days. See you tomorrow.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Gold and silver. You can own the most stable assets in recorded history with BullionMax.com. Buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals shipped fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live can get you their silver starter kit at employee pricing. Just go to BullionMax.com/FTL. It includes 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products plus a free gold bag. This offer is limited to 1 per household, so get yours now. Go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live?